Show.
It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The Wes Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, September 7th, 2022. Thank you so much for joining us here around Drag Racing's water cooler. We got a barn burner of a show for you guys today. We'll be joined here in about a half hour by the one, the only, somebody I believe has forever cemented his legacy in drag racing, the one and only Greg Anderson, fresh off scoring his 100th win at the NHRA US Nationals this past weekend in Indianapolis. Shortly after that, we will be joined by Ron Capps, who had an iconic career-defining weekend at the U.S. Nationals. We're going to finish off the show with one of our good buddies, a regular here on the Wes Buck Show, the one and only Lyle Barnett, who scored the win at the NHRA US Nationals in Pro Modified. I think it was a fantastic weekend for drag racing. I hardly know where to start. I tell you what, I know where to start. Thank you guys. Thank you all so much for being here and being a part of this. Remember, click like, click share, help us spread the gospel of drag racing. It makes a huge difference, way more than you maybe know. So thank you guys for being here every Wednesday. I hope you're having as much fun doing this stuff as we are, guys. So hey, let's get right into it. I don't think there's any reason to beat around the bush. As always, I'm joined by my partners in crime, the ones, the onlys, Mike Carpenter, JT Hudson. What's up, guys? It was so good to see you in Indy, man. Like we spent most of the week together.
Yeah, we really embodied that.
Oh, dude, you guys lived up to that title in a big, big way this past weekend. Let's do this quickly. And I know we talked about it a little bit Friday. We're not going to have enough time to give all the necessary shout outs today. So I apologize to anybody we miss. Massive weekend for our squad, the Drag Illustrated squad here. Huge week from the start to finish, to be honest. I mean, the three of us ended up arriving in Indianapolis on Tuesday. It was a long week in Indy, but by God, it was well worth it. Let's just do immediate reactions. I'm going to start with you, T, because Mike and I have been going to the U.S. Nationals for a while, and I think this is worth talking about because you've been to every outlaw drag strip. You've seen radial racing at its height. You've seen all these, the PDRA, Midwest, all these different sanctions and series that you've seen, but somehow, some way, this is your first time going to an NHRA national event, your first time going to the big show. And I'm just curious, we chose a good one, man. Like
you did,
your candid, like off the cuff reaction to showing up and seeing the size and scale and significance that is the NHRA US Nationals.
Yeah, it's pretty damn cool. I mean, as soon as you come around the corner, you realize like, holy cow, it's like, man. And I guess you just get so used to everybody complaining that it's that. Of course, Indy's probably different than a lot of tracks, but still, I mean, it was packed out on Friday night. It was packed out through the day, in the pits. Hell, you couldn't hardly get through the pits with a cart or even just walking through on sometimes. And
I don't think people really understand the scope of an NHRA national event. I mean, it's easy,
especially that. That one's got more of that. It's almost got that festival feel to it, like we said last week.
And I think that I'm sure that a lot of people take it for granted. I know that we do. I think there's probably you could probably ask any of those fans standing out there that would love to get behind those ropes and talk to somebody.
Well, we saw that. We saw people parked along the side of the road that runs behind the track, trying to kind of stand up on their vehicles and
catch a glimpse
through between the tower. I mean
we were over at Alex Laughlin's, right before Wes got to warm up a top fueler, with Scott Palmer, and this lady standing out there, and I could tell she was, she's looking around, and I said, you need something, ma'am? And she's like, I am such a fan of Alex Laughlin's. And I've been standing out here, off and on, just trying to, get his attention or anything. And I just love to have a picture with him. And I said,
I watched you go up and get him.
She goes, I really almost feel like a stalker at this point. And
I think
and
Alex
so,
has a few stalkers.
Yeah,
yeah,
it
so
wouldn't
I just went up
surprise
and
me.
grabbed Alex, and then I felt bad because then I thought I started something because then everybody's asking for an autograph and whatnot.
JT
But,
is a man of the people.
oh
That's one thing that we
people's champ.
reinforced
Yeah,
this
whatever.
weekend. Man
It's
of the
Alex's
people.
birthday today. We should
Oh,
have had
happy
Alex on the
birthday.
show.
Yeah,
Happy
we should've,
birthday,
yeah.
Alex Laughlin,
Wes
show
would've sang
producer
to you,
Blake.
you
I
know.
would have happily
Yeah,
sang.
he would have. Yep.
I would have happily sang. Not saying I'm exceptionally talented, but I'm willing. That's the difference maker. More often than not, being willing is what it's all about. I'm going to tell you guys.
It's quite a production, though. All in all,
The
you
whole
know.
thing, people need to
Yeah.
see it. I've heard for years that Indy isn't what it used to be, blah, blah, blah. And that's just this, it's this hater mentality that I got to be honest with you guys. It really does. It's starting to grate on me that for the longest time, you want to just go, oh, it's the internet, blah, blah, blah. But, I do think there's a significant issue that exists in our sport is not being grateful and thankful for what we have. I mean, it is so easy to point back to yesteryear and go, oh man, they used to get 1,300 cars at the US. Who cares? Fresh off a global pandemic, a very, very unruly economy, an even more unruly political environment, so many issues going on in this world today. And to see 900 plus race cars, 940 something race cars on a single, just the economic impact that event had on the area. I mean,
For
alone,
such a long period of time. It's
for such a
basically
prolonged
week-long.
period of time, a week long, hotels rented, restaurants packed full of people, bar and grills full of people. You
People are starting to get
cannot overstate it.
They're just starting to get wired that way. I mean, because let's face it, man, they jump on social media and they see everybody on a soapbox bitching about something. And I think that, I mean, if you sit and watch and listen and read all that all the time, then your natural instinct when you're talking to somebody is going to be to bitch about something, regardless if it's even worth bitching about.
I mean, I tell you what, I think our
that way,
entire
but
sport
maybe
could,
that's how
like-
you're going to start your conversation off with somebody is, instead of how's the weather, like, can you believe this shit?
I know. And
you're
listen,
right.
there's room for improvement. Absolutely, man. But when you
Always.
think about the fact that the race was over like on time Monday afternoon, like they had 900
they
some odd
battled
race
weather,
cars,
they
they
had
had
live
crashes,
TV.
and they had weather and live TV and oil downs and all this stuff. I mean, can you imagine the nightmare? As awesome as it is for those of us watching, the nightmare that is 40, 45 nitro cars on the property. Like, it's a great thing for the fans in attendance, but man, there's not a safety safari member that's not going, oh boy, we got our work cut out for us. I mean, you get 45, 12,000 or whatever the number is today, horsepower hot rods out on the drag strip at any given time. And it typically takes a long time to get her done. And these guys, I mean, I think a tip of the freaking cap and a round of applause for the NHRA Safety Safari, Jeff Conley, that whole crew, because it was a home run effort. I mean, if you look no further than that, like forget the fans in the stands, forget the amount of participation, forget all these things, the sponsor support and the various activities that were going on. I saw television news crews. I saw the Lucas Oil helicopter. There's all sorts of stuff. There were celebrities there. John Force is holding an event. Cruz Pedregon's holding an event. There was something going on. Don Schumacher had a Cars and Coffee on Saturday or Friday morning. I mean, there was so much happening. But let's not overlook the fact that they got the race done. Despite all of that, the NHRA Safety Safari, the NHRA officials rose to the occasion and crushed it. I mean, I've been going to Indy. I was trying to figure this up, and I've never been one of those guys. And as I get older, I have a little bit more of appreciation for keeping track of that shit, but I've just never been great at it. I went to Indy probably for the first time 20 years ago, and I think about just the sheer volume, the size of that event is so incredible. And I hope everybody in our sport, no matter where you operate, whether you're a grassroots weekend warrior bracket racer, or you're an outlaw heads up guy, or you were out at Jim Halsey Cecil County Dragway this past weekend, or maybe you were at Cletus and Cars at Bristol Motor Speedway with Cletus McFarland, wherever you fit in this world, I hope you're walking around this week with your chest puffed out, because drag racing showed up and showed out in Indianapolis this weekend. I don't care what anybody says. That deal is strong as the day is long. And it's tough, man. I mean, I talk to all these racers that are bummed about where they got pitted or what have you. And those are all acceptable responses. I get it. And I was bummed out about a couple of the things that happened. But when I really, truly put myself in the role or the seat of the NHRA, man, when you got 45 nitro cars on the property, it's really hard to look too far beyond that. I mean, you've got one hell of a show right there. And I can't imagine how difficult it would be. I mean, am I wrong, Mike? I mean, can you imagine having that in your arsenal, having 45 nitro cars on the property and getting up in arms about where XYZ categories parked? It's like, guys, I get it. That sucks. Bummer for you guys. But
it reinforces there's nitro and there's everything else type of mentality that we sort of lament when we're involved in other classes. But yeah, it is hard to argue, but the quality of the cars, I think, really spoke for itself. You had 25, I believe, top fuel cars.
Yep.
And that was the quickest top fuel field in history, making it, by default, the quickest field in NHRA history. And that goes to, the quality of the teams, not tearing their stuff up, not oiling down the track. I think that is the only thing that probably saved NHRA from getting off schedule is the fact that everybody's stuff stayed together. There were a few incidences, but by and large, a great show. And JT's first nitro show, if you haven't seen the video, we got JT's first nitro reaction. That was another good moment. But yeah, I mean,
but
Indy,
there's a comment here,
like
and I'm not
Indy
trying to get derailed, but I see like we got to be very weary. It's like 45 nitro cars sounds like a March meet. Hey guys, let's pump the brakes. We're talking about a 16 car field of cars running 370s and 60s. I mean, we're talking apples and oranges, guys. I don't want to be confrontational, but to have the caliber of cars, guys that were, I felt so bad for Scott Palmer. I felt so bad for Alex Laughlin, Will Smith making his competition debut in Top Fuel and doing well. I mean, there's none of those guys that we just talked about, Krista Baldwin, the list goes on, have anything to hang their head about.
At some other races, those guys are in easily.
Oh, and this into the show.
Yeah, there's just so many on the property that can compete. I think, of course, the crowd was solid, but man, I just wish, we've talked about this before about having, the pro stocks or the pro mods or, getting some of those eliminations started maybe a little bit earlier. And I would love to see some of those big crowds, be there, on whatever, different races, of course, different nights, but like Saturday night or Sunday night during when they're packed out before they have to go to work the next day, and they're going to be able to stay late and running those eliminations, in front of those guys, because I think that'd be really cool for a lot of them to see that probably didn't get to see it. So, I
mean, I think I look at like Spencer Massey went 379 with an 8 at 323, didn't qualify, finished 17th, I believe, 18th. Alex Laughlin, I don't know what Alex's career best is off the top of my head, but he went 380 with a 9, 314, didn't qualify. Will Smith, 383, 315, didn't qualify. Krista Baldwin, 386, I believe, at 305, didn't qualify. Really, really, really tough weekend. But man, to your guys' point, like it was a strong weekend for nitro drag racing. And I think I have a newfound appreciation for nitro racing after sitting between the frame rails of that Top Fuel Scott Palmer's. But I was wondering
why we were talking about nitro so much.
No, I'm impressed by it, man. Now, right? I mean, and hey, listen, I'm a pro mod guy. I'm a door slammer guy, and I will be forever. And that's where my heart is. But I do think for all the beating that NHRA takes sometimes, it's become like a religion to hate on these guys. I mean, it's incredible. And they do a lot of things wrong. There's no doubt. I think they make mistakes. We all do. But man, it's hard to fault them. I mean, you put 45 high-level nitro teams on the property at a single event, man, it's very, very difficult to find fault and to finish the show on time, to do everything that they did, record-setting fields. I mean, you look at like qualifying in funny car, just to kind of talk about that specifically.
Well, record set.
Ron Capps and Robert Height, 1 and 2 in qualifying, right? Arguably the two baddest cars in funny car racing meet in the final. I mean, that was a really, really strong performance for nitro drag racing. And I think it serves as a reminder because, let's think about how much talk there is when the fields are short. And I think that's the angle I want to take here, at least momentarily. If the fields were short, it would be all over. If there were 13 cars, right, it would be the talk of town that there were only 13 cars in Indianapolis, right? But there was 25, and what do we want to say? Well, I remember when they used to get 30. And it's like,
right.
Guys, Let's
And
start swimming the same direction.
Was there over the graphic that we posted on our social media page about the number of cars and it being so many since whatever date, and there was just all this debate, everyone trying to tear that down. The bottom line was,
you're missing the point, kids.
Yeah, we're gonna have a high water mark, the most cars we've had in several years, and kind of goes along with the theme that I felt at Indy this week was that Indy's back. We're back to eliminations on Monday. We're back to racing there once a year as far as a national event. I think the deal in 2020 and 2021 sort of pushed that narrative that, man, we don't need to do Indy on Monday. We don't need to have this long event. We can just race here 6 times or whatever they did. And, getting back to the way it was, I think strengthened the show. And we saw that this weekend.
That's my opinion, man. And I just would like to, sometimes I want to grab the racing community collectively, by its shoulders and shake it real good. Guys, we got to get our head in the game here. Yes. Again, there's things to improve. There's things we could do better. There's things that could be streamlined. I think that all these things, everything can be improved. But man, these are high tides. This is a high tide moment for the sport of drag racing. And I guess I just want everybody, can't we collectively celebrate a few of these things, right? Let's not immediately default, default to comparing it to yesteryear or how it used to be. And I agree with you, Mike. It is the default, but I think feel some sort of responsibility to be the one who bucks that trend. No pun intended, but somebody has to say it out loud.
It is. It's a mentality problem.
We cannot continue to do this. Our sport as a whole, this is fertile soil we're walking around on. I tell that to people constantly. When I go to an NHRA national event, despite all that has happened in the course of the last 7 decades, all that has been accomplished, all these stars that have been created, all these icons and legends, there is most assuredly room to grow. We have a lot of ground to cover in the future for the sport of drag racing. But we're not going to get it done if we spend almost all of our time, or an inordinate amount of our time, bitching and moaning about how it used to be, right? This is where it is, and it's better than you think. I cannot imagine. I went on a tirade. I very rarely do this on social media, with a comment, but it's like nitro's $1,400 a barrel for 40 gallons, right? 40, not a 55-gallon drum, a 40-gallon drum. It's $1,400. Right? These Top Fuel and Funny Car teams are blowing through drums of nitro like it's their job. It is. But it's like, holy crap, guys, can we not just take a step back and recognize the significance? You essentially have to buy nitromethane from the Department of Homeland Security, right? This is not an easy thing to do. And the fact that we make it look as easy as we do as a sport, I think it's something to be proud about. And I get frustrated that it's immediate. Here's another one, and I'm going to actually pin Ron Capps down on this. I would like for everybody to tell me in the comments, give us some feedback here. Are you aware, right, that Ron Capps won $180,000 this past weekend? Right? Ron Capps won $180,000 this past weekend, right? When a no prep king guy wins 40 grand, or Ryan Martin wins $100,000 in the title hunt or whatever for no prep kings, I get 6,000 texts about it. But Ron Capps wins $180,000 this weekend, and nobody's talking about it, right? Why aren't we screaming from the rafters that that's what it should pay $100,000 to win the U.S. Nationals? It absolutely should. And it did. But it feels like it's falling on deaf ears. If they race for 10 grand, the comment section would be lit up like Vegas, right? But they're racing for 100, and we're just going to act ho-hum about it like it's no big deal.
It's a mentality where you sit around and you complain about something. It's that way, and you're going to complain about it anyway and keep complaining about it. And then you have another mindset of, okay, I realize all these problems. But I'm going to go ahead and do what I need to do, even, knowing these problems, and move forward. And you have to do that. You're never going to win shit if you don't.
No, I completely agree, T. And Mike, you and I've had these conversations so many times, it's not even funny, about payouts and being more loud and proud about it. And I think that there has been, I think you'll agree with me, Mike, there have been plenty of times the NHRA likely didn't want to talk about payouts.
Oh yeah,
but this past weekend,
I think that's the default, and that's why they're so used to kind of not trumpeting the fact that Ron won that much money.
Because I think do you agree? This should be, that's the headline. I've got a graphic that's getting ready to go out on social that says exactly that, because I'm going, let's change the conversation here. Like, that's the world we live in, is just steering the narrative and being willing to like kickstart a conversation or steer a conversation a certain direction. Let's talk about the fact that Ron Capps left, I mean, a brand new team owner, right? Who there's nobody in the sport of drag racing who takes owning a top fuel team or a funny car team lightly, right? This old boy went home with $180,000, right? I mean, that's a big win for the sport of drag racing. I think that that's something that will sell sponsorships. That's what gets people excited about this stuff. The numbers have to be big. And when they are, it's a responsibility to yell and scream about it.
Amen, sure, man. But this deal, Indy showed out this weekend. This is our theme for the day, but the eliminations on Monday, you can't ask for much more. Let's recap. Let's do a quick run through before we get our first guest on of the highlights from really the whole weekend and from Monday. We had Brittany Force set the track record, 364 at 337.75. They're just, on a tear with that car. We've got Ron Capps, as we talked about in Funny Car, doubling up, first U.S. Nationals win. Antron Brown, first U.S. Nationals win since, I believe, how long has it been since Antron?
It's been a long time, like 11 maybe?
But it's been since 2011 since Greg Anderson.
Yeah,
Greg and Antron, I believe, both in 2011. So in 2006, since Matt Smith won. What
do you think that's
in Pro Stock Motorcycle too? And it was shocking to me that he had not won since 2006. Shocking to me that Greg hasn't won it since 2011. Same for Antron. And how many times have we talked about the fact that Ron has not won the U.S. Nationals before this weekend?
I think it's incredible. I really think, and we're going to get to talk to Greg Anderson about this, because here's another guy who has won it. The only person in Pro Stock who's won the U.S. Nationals more than Greg Anderson is Bob Glidden. And he's joined truly elite company, as a driver. But I think that race is just
him and John with 100
him and John.
wins.
It's an infinitely challenging race to win. I think it fights you in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, not only just a war of attrition, making 5 qualifying runs, having to last through 4 rounds of eliminations, but even more difficult is varying track temperature or varying track conditions, varying weather conditions, varying run order conditions. There's no telling sometimes when they start juggling that schedule around. I was so confused on Sunday and Monday because, I'd see a schedule, then I'd see a revised schedule, and they're doing what they have to do. So no knock against NHRA Safety Safari, obviously doing a fantastic job. But can you imagine the challenge that becomes for these crew chiefs and these drivers? It's like, man, who are we running after? Is there clutch dust? When did they drag it last? I mean, there was a couple of cars that go up in smoke there on elimination day, and then the final round, it looked to me like Antron Brown's car was like half a car out of the groove because Robert Height had smoked the tires right in front of him. Right. And they're going, hey, we can't be in that bald spot. Right. He just ripped all the rubber off the track. They had that car like a full width.
We saw some lane swaps, too, in a couple of different classes to start eliminations, which is kind of rare in today's times. You don't see that as much as you used to because the tracks are so well prepped and so even.
No, it's just the whole situation, I think, from top to bottom was absolutely fantastic.
The call-outs were awesome, too.
I thought. Call-out.
Yeah,
there was so much going on, man.
And the videos for that were great.
Yeah, those were great. They showed those on the broadcast.
Had some humor, in them as well. I mean, it was really good stuff.
And then we can't forget our door slammer guys, Lyle Barnett getting the emotional first win of the season, U.S. Nationals win. We're gonna have Lyle on in just a bit, and Johnny Placino in Mountain Motor Pro Stock.
Yeah, JT and I argued for 2 hours yesterday about whether or not Johnny had won in Indy before, but he had won in Indy before during the coronavirus season when there was multiple events happening at the US Nationals, or at Indy, but he had not won the U.S. Nationals. And, that's something that I think almost any driver would say that you could hang your hat on. Like if you don't accomplish anything else, if that's all she wrote and you've got to park it and call it a career with an NHRA US Nationals win under your belt. You can feel like you've done what you set out to do, guys. And I tell you what, let's pay some bills here real quick. Remind everybody, JT, that you especially, no, I'm just joking, that each and every episode of the show, the Wes Buck Show, is made possible by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits, gloves, and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com. Make sure you tell them your friends at Drag Illustrated sent you. Guys, it is right on the button, 2:31. Let's go ahead and bring the one, the only Greg Anderson on the show and talk a little bit of shop. Greg, what's going on,
Greg?
buddy?
Congratulations.
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen.
Oh, my God.
Pretty good weekend, didn't you?
I had a pretty darn fair weekend. Yeah. What went on last weekend?
Oh my goodness, buddy! What a scene, man! If I think about the movie that this is quickly becoming, right? I mean, you have to feel that way to some extent, and it is as difficult as I'm sure it was to come up short and have that 100th win elude you for as long as it did. Would you change it now, looking through the lens of what happened the last few days? I mean, is this a fitting situation to score your 100th win in NHRA Pro Stock at the NHRA US Nationals?
No, it's absolutely perfect, and for whatever reason, I guess it was meant to be that I just couldn't get it done before now. It's kind of funny, but I kept telling myself, I guess there's a better plan. There's a bigger plan ahead. There's a better story, and I don't know how I could possibly write a better story. And I know Indy's big, and it means a lot, but it means so much more to me. It's always meant the world to me. Indy is it's like winning 10 races in one. It's incredible. It's absolutely the toughest competition you race all year long. It's everybody is able to raise their bar there. And you know, with the 5 qualifying sessions, it's like by come Monday, everybody has got their car perfect. And the field is always the most tightly packed there by the time you come to racing on Monday. That it's a heck of a task to try and win that race, to try and stay fresh by Monday. It's a marathon, and you're just flat wore out by Monday, but you got to find a way to dig down and be your best on Monday. And the competition being always as tough as it is, it's the greatest feeling in the world when you win at Indy. It doesn't matter to me if I'm a driver or a crew chief. It's always meant tenfold what any other race has. And you know, we won Indy quite a few times back in our heyday, and it seemed like they almost came easy. And then we went through a dry spell of 11 years, I guess it was, that we hadn't been able to win Indy, and you wonder if you ever will again. So to finally win Indy again after 11 years and make that my 100th win, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it happened, and I can't believe it happened there. And I'm so thankful to everybody that's helped me, all this great race team I've got here at KB Racing, all these great sponsors I've got, you know, all the years that Summit's been involved, and all the wins they've got under their belt to add up to this number 100, and to get Mr. Hendrick a really, really cool trophy. It's
perhaps the coolest one, at least for those of us that grew up in the sport of drag racing. I don't know if there's anything more satisfying or more important than a Wally from the NHRA US Nationals. Greg, you probably don't remember this, but I met you for the first time. I was probably 12 years old, and you had just left Warren Johnson to go out on your own. You had that white and red Firebird. Who was on the side of that car?
Troy Humphrey.
Troy Humphrey. Okay. My dad, actually, we pitted right next to you at the U.S. Nationals, I think in 97. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, did you ever in your wildest dreams, because I remember you were pulling your hair out back then. It didn't look quite like it did now. No. You know, your pro stock program. And I'm just curious, like, you and John Force are the only professional drivers in drag racing to have achieved 100 wins. I mean, was that... I mean, I part of me wants to hear you say that, like, yep, I set out to be the greatest of all time. But I'm curious, was that even on your radar back then? Did you even fathom that this could be where you are right now?
Absolutely, positively not. I never thought or even dreamed I could win one race. Back at that time, I was just hoping I could learn how to drive. And it was ugly when I started. There's a lot of people in the industry that kind of know the story of how I got started, and it's ugly. And I sure wish to hell they'd forget about how it started, because it was bad. But nobody ever dreamed, including me, that it'd go this far. I just wanted to find out. And when I left Warren, I told him, look, dude, I just got to try it. I got to give it a try. I got to find out if I can even do it, if I can even drive one of these things. So that was as high as the bar got set when I left Warren. And I told him, look, dude, if I can't do it, I'll be back knocking on your door begging for my job back. But I scraped and clawed, and even though it started off ugly, I made progress. And man, we went forward. And when I put this KB Racing team together, when Ken Black came around and offered me all the resources that he did, and let me hire the people that I was able to hire, it just took off. But it didn't take off because of me. It took off because of all the people that I surrounded myself with.
You can do it. You can clearly do it, Greg, but you got to tell us that ugly story, because I think those are inspiring things. It's easy to talk about. Nobody wants to talk about that shit, right? They want to talk about the winner's circle. So tell us some of those early ugly days.
We went to Rockingham. The first crack I got, Warren gave me a first crack at driving a car. We went to Rockingham, and I think it was back when it was the invitational race they had, the special invitational race that they had. I think Winston was the sponsor back then. And we went to Rockingham for the invitation. They said, here, I'll give you your first shot at driving. So we went there, and I got this Cutlass, and I tried to drive this Cutlass. And I go out there for the first pass, and I do the burnout. And, something just didn't seem quite right. Obviously, the RPM seemed higher than it should be. And the bottom line was I was completely burning the clutch out of the car. The tires were not spinning. I had hooked the tire. When I let the clutch out, the tire was not spinning, and I just put her on the floor. And now the motor's screaming away, and the tires are not turning. And I went all the way to the starting line without the tires spinning. And I thought, well, I guess I got that done. So I backed up from the burnout. And my crew chief, who was Kevin Horst, who used to work at Warren's for many, many years, great buddy of mine, is going like this, shut it off, just shaking his head. And I'm like, what's wrong with him? Am I leaking oil or something? Have no earthly idea. And I have completely destroyed the clutch in the car. I had no idea. They shut me off. We brought it back to the pits, and we had to get a hammer and chisel to chisel the clutch apart, to chisel the discs apart. It was completely welded to the flywheel. It was the ugliest thing you ever saw. And unfortunately, still a lot of the guys that are out there racing with us now remember that day like it was yesterday, and they will not let it die. They will not, let me live it down. And that's how it all started. So, I don't know. Everybody thought I should probably just go ahead and quit right after that, but I was too stupid to quit. And I got back in and tried again. And I don't know. Somehow we got to where we're at now. It's a pretty crazy story, but it was not pretty to begin with.
Did you, whenever you were younger, was it in your mind that you wanted to try driving one, or as you got closer and kind of further along working with Warren Johnson that you go, you know what, I would like to drop the bomb on one of these things?
No, sir. And I've told this story, but here's exactly how it happened. I worked for Warren. I was his crew chief. Kurt was crew chiefing our second car, which I think Don Beverly was driving at the time. And I don't know what was going on, but Warren was struggling to win races. We had all the power in the world, and we had the capability of winning races, and he was making, what we thought were mistakes behind the wheel. So Kurt and I were hacking on him. We were kind of telling him, here's how you need to do this. And, you're losing all these races you shouldn't be losing. And he finally got mad one day, and he said, look, you two smart asses, I'm going to send the both of you to Roy Hill's drag racing school. You're both going to get on the inside of one of these cars, because we never had before. And you're going to learn just how difficult it is to drive one of these cars. I'm tired of listening to it. I don't want to hear it anymore. So he sent both of us to Roy's school. Kurt went the first week. I went the second week. Kurt came back and all excited and was able to get a ride. I think he got a ride with the Scribner brothers, and he went to the next race, and he was now a pro stock driver. I came back, and Warren's like, what'd you think? And it was kind of the same thing. My first day at the Roy Hill school, I couldn't even do a burnout.
Did you drive that Thunderbird?
I drove the Thunderbird, and I couldn't even do the burnout. It was just ugly. Could be the first day. The second day, for some reason, I came back and everything slowed down. And Roy couldn't believe it either, right? Because I've been around these cars forever. I'm this big crew chief for Warren Johnson, and he's bragging to all the other guys in the class, watch this guy, right? And I completely screwed it. I couldn't do anything right. So first day, ugly. Second day, I got it better. I got my license, came back, and Warren said, now, do you understand? I said, yes, I understand. It's a little more difficult on the inside of the car. So I didn't quite have the opportunity Kurt had to just go find a ride and try and drive pro stock. I had to have a job, which was Warren's crew chief. So I buckled down and continued on with that job, and hoping that someday that Warren would step out of the car and I'd get a chance. And he kept saying, you know, I'll drive one more year and maybe I'll give you a chance at trying to drive this thing, and maybe one more year and I'll give you a chance. And that went on for 3-4 years. And I finally decided he's never going to get out of this car. So I got fortunate and I met my wife, who was Troy Humphrey's daughter, at the races, and we got married. And Troy offered me a chance to drive his car. So I went to Warren and said, I got to try this chance. And, you know, I just don't know when you're going to get out of the car and I'll get a chance here. And long story short, he raced for another 5-6 years. So I guess I made the right decision to go try it, even as ugly as it was. But yeah, my father-in-law, Troy Humphrey, gave me my first shot.
Well, thank God you did, man. I mean, one of the things that we hear about all the time, like anytime we make a post on social, on the Drag Illustrated social channels, I want to remind everybody out there, thank you for our support. Our Facebook page is growing like 1,500 likes a day right now, 10,000 a week. It's unbelievable. So thank you to everybody that's participating in this incredible moment in time for me and my team. But one of the things that people love to throw out, Greg, is, well, you know, just think back to when there was Bob Glidden and there was Lee Shepard, right? And listen, nobody's a bigger fan of pro stock perhaps than me. But I do think sometimes people fail to realize that the advantage, those guys had the field covered, like by a lot. And I don't mean to, I'm going to probably get a hate mail from somebody, but I don't mean to talk out of turn, but I do think we look back through rose-colored glasses, right? We fail to realize that, yeah, there may have been more cars, but there was only a handful of really, really good ones. Can you compare and contrast? Like maybe we forego the Lee Shepard, Bob Glidden era, but let's talk about that late 90s era. A lot of people point to that 97, 8, 99, early 2000s as a real, you know, high point, high watermark for pro stock drag racing. You know, maybe there were 30, 40 cars showing up at the U.S. Nationals, but there was only a handful of them that you could pretty much pick out the semis. Yeah. Could you compare and contrast like that late 90s to where we're at today when damn near every car in the field probably can win?
That's the big difference right there. Back then, legitimately, honestly, you had 3 or 4 cars tops that could win. You know, Warren Johnson, Frank Iconio, Bob Glidden. You know, the fourth would have been, you know, I don't know if that was the Butch Leal era, if that was before then or whatever, but literally 4 cars tops that could and had a chance to win. And the difference, the gap between the number 1 and number 16 qualifier, I'd have to look back at the sheet, but I'm going to guess it had to have been at least 2/10, if not 3/10. So yes, a little bit of difference. And you know, those guys kind of had 2, even 3 rounds to just kind of basically test and get their stuff ready for the semifinal and final when they'd actually have some competition. And, you know, it sounds bad to say that, but that's the way it was. And you see how it is right now. First round is like a final round. Second round is like a final round. Anybody that qualifies for the show anymore can win the race. And, you know, I'm certainly on the inside. I certainly understand it as good as anybody. It would be like insider trading for me to pick a winner. I can't pick a winner come Sunday. It's impossible. So that's the difference. And I've been through both of it. I've lived through both of it. And that's why it's harder to win multiple events in many, many races nowadays versus back in the day, because there's honestly 16 sharks anymore instead of 3 or 4. So it's really, it's that simple. That's the difference.
What do you make of where we're at in terms of, you know, one of the things that I hope you recognize or at least walk around with your chest puffed out is that you've turned, you know, KB Racing into a real business, right? I mean, you guys have customers, you have a slew of customers, you're doing very well. I mean, I'm just curious, like, what's your take on the state of affairs right now? I mean, you may or may not have heard me ranting and raving about how victorious of a weekend it looked like the NHRA had this past week in Indianapolis. It looked good by all accounts. I mean, what's your take on the state of affairs right now? You know, the number of races that you guys are running, your client base seems to be strong. I mean, what's your take on the status of Pro Stock? Do you feel that you've got a future as a team, you know, kind of a power provider or a power broker in the Pro Stock space for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we completely 2-3 years ago, you know, our race team, KB Racing, and the Elite Motorsports Group, and even the Magaha Group, we all got our heads together and we decided, look, if we're going to save this class and we're going to make it so that our kids can race in the future, and it's not just all about us old guys, and 4 or 5 more years, the class dies out and it's done. If we want it to go on to the next generation, we got to do something. So we did. We absolutely stopped that selfish feeling of just worrying about, Greg Anderson's race car, Erica Anders' race car, and that's it. That's all that's important. And honestly, that's the way we were 10 years ago. That's all we had to worry about was my race car and Jason Lyon's race car. And, we put every resource we had into trying to make those two race cars win. Now it's completely opposite. And we've basically taken on several rental customers at a very, very, very respectable, very reasonable, affordable price. There's no way any of these guys could go start their own engine department for anywhere near the amount of money it costs them to come rent a complete operation from us. They get it tuned by the crew chiefs that tune our race cars. They get the same equipment. They're able to go out and win races, win championships. Look at Bo Butner.
I was just getting ready to mention Bo, because how big of a point of pride was that moment for you? Because that really is a significant accomplishment. You've obviously, we're comparing you to John Force. We're mentioning Greg Anderson's name in the same breath as John Force's. But tabling what you and Jason have accomplished, holy shit, Bo Butner won a championship as a rental customer for you.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it hurt. It hurt like hell because he beat me in the final round at Pomona to win that thing, right? So I wanted to cry, but at the same time, I wanted to be proud of what we created and what we did for Bo. So that's done so much, I think, for the class, and that's the way it is. It's not all about Greg Anderson anymore. It's not all about Jason Lyon. It's not all about Erica Anders. It's about doing what's best for the class and looking for the future. And everybody's seen it. NHRA's seen it. NHRA talks about it all the time. We can't believe what you guys actually did, and it's thank you for doing that. You saved the class, and we love it. You're probably the strongest class there is right now as far as participation and what you guys have done. You got your act together, and we're scared to death that some of the other classes will not make that move that you made. We wish they would. You guys kind of showed them what it takes and how you do it. But boy, you got to swallow your pride. You got to swallow every bit of pride you have and every bit of selfishness you have, and certainly. We're racers. We got a lot of pride.
Thing to do,
ego, and it's all about us. It always has been. So that was very, very difficult, and that's what it took, though. And that's the secret. That's the recipe, and we've showed the rest of the classes what they're going to have to do to go forward.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about you guys throughout the early part of the season, or I guess, my God, it's hard to believe that it's already September. I'm having a hard time. The last thing I remember, Greg, was the 4th of July. Before that was Christmas. It just seems like 2022 has been going at warp speed. But throughout the regular season, it seemed clear. Erica Anders, as we've been talking, and the Elite Motorsports Company seem to have a significant performance advantage. We've watched as you have absolutely narrowed the gap. You were the class of the field at the U.S. Nationals. I'm just curious, a couple of things, a little two-part question. Are you guys peaking at the precise right time? And if you're willing to share a little bit with us, where are those performance gains made at this point in time? Is it manifold design, runner design? Because it just seems like with a relatively confined configuration, for those of the people watching along that maybe don't know, NHRA Pro Stock, this is a small window. They are very little to work with. 500 cubic inch naturally aspirated engines, 2,350 pound race cars. We got a mandated Holley ECU. We got mandated K&N air intake box. There's so many things that you guys are restricted on. How do you narrow the gap at this stage in the game?
Well, that's just it. And I'm going to say that we've been guilty over the last 2-3 years. And I don't mean just myself, but I mean the Elite Motorsports Group the same way. We've said it many times to ourselves, to each other. We're just kind of against the wall here. That we just don't think with the rules package there's much we can do anymore. And because of that, we all probably got a little lazy. Well, the Elite Motorsport gang showed over the winter whatever mindset it took or whatever the avenue they took, they made some big gains. And when we came to Pomona and saw that, we're like, oh my God, that's a huge step forward that nobody's made over the last 2-3 years. So apparently it can be done. And we had to basically change our mindset and go back to thinking that, like we used to think, that if you work on these things, you can continue to make gains. So we rededicated ourselves and we got a new mindset that apparently power can be found. Elite did find power. We need to go to work and try and find some power. So we went to work on a lot of different things that we just pretty much had stopped working on over the last couple of years. And thank the Lord, we found a few things before, I guess it was the West Coast to Seattle race, I guess it was. And, it was several little things that kind of added up to a decent gain. And now I've been able to, over the last few weeks, apply that to the rest of my customers' cars, as we've been able to get enough pieces and parts in. But I'm telling you, we were very guilty that we kind of went to sleep and just kind of accepted the fact that, it just is what it is, and we're all kind of stuck, and that's the way it's going to be. And hats off to Elite. They proved that's not the way it is, and we went to work, and we've been able to make gains too. So it's a great feeling. And your other question to that was, are we peaking at the right time? Have we peaked? Yes, and I hope not. We are definitely peaking for where we've been all season, but I hope over the next 2-3 weeks we can continue to go a little bit farther forward, and that's certainly going to be the game plan, or the attempt. If we can't, we're a hell of a lot better than we've been the first 8 months of the season. We can at least go and contend for wins. But if we can find a way to go farther forward, then we'll be a serious threat for that championship. And I know, the Elite teams had a great, great year, and they've won a lot of races. But it's not going to be easy for them come countdown time, but it shouldn't be. When you win one of these things, it shouldn't be easy. You got to go earn it every single day. I was the same way last year. I had a great season up until the playoffs, but come playoff time, I could have lost the whole thing. Just like it's possible for them to lose the whole thing when you reshape the deck like this, and everybody starts over. I tell you what, it comes down to a 6-race shootout. You better have your ducks in the water.
I remember like the first time I went to David Rear's engine building school, the Rear Morrison engine building school. It's like 20 years ago. And I remember anytime people ask me about like, what's the deal with Pro Stock? I tell them the story of walking into that shop and seeing more sheet metal manifolds than I have ever seen in my life, more aluminum, more cylinder heads than I had ever seen. And I go, what's all that stuff, David? And he goes, the stuff that doesn't work.
Yep.
And I try to wrap, most people, I know so many people who have like saved up all winter to buy their first new sheet metal manifold, right? And you guys are going through them daily. And it's when you almost have to use stories like that to really demonstrate how hard that you guys are trying to make 1 horsepower, make this thing. So I'm curious, whenever you find that power, like say you find a very small amount of power, but you've got this really refined clutch program. I've noticed on at this stage in the game, I don't see massive 4-link changes on these cars, the way you did way back when,
Right.
So does it disrupt your program to a certain extent where you go, okay, man, we had the clutch program so close. We got the rear of the car so close, but now we've picked up a little bit. Because I think sometimes people maybe don't understand that, we made a gain in the dyno room, but now we have to translate that to the racetrack.
Yep, absolutely. And every quality run you make, there's 3 things that have to be perfect. That engine has to be perfect, the car has to be perfect, and the crew chiefs have to make the perfect call on the setup of the car. And without any one of them, you slow down. So, you can have a great engine, and you have to have a great engine in Pro Stock, obviously, but you can make that great engine look awful bad, run to run on things you do with the race car and things you do as a driver. You miss shifts, you hit the chip on gear shifts. It just, there's a million ways to slow the car back down. So everything got to go perfect. And it's hard to explain to people when they see that scoreboard and it gives the ET and then it gives the speed, and you see 2-3 mile an hour difference between some of the cars with the same ET. And that's hard to explain to people that it's just simply a different way of gearing your race car and running your race car. And you're basically, some cars are on the chip at the finish line, the 10.5 limit, earlier than others. And some people believe that's the best way to ET the car and get there quicker. And some people don't buy into that theory. So you see both out there, and that's not the true teller of the horsepower out there anymore. It used to be the true gauge of it when you had unlimited RPM, but now with the rev limiter, it's hard to gauge that horsepower value. But I can tell you, of all the major, engine builder suppliers in this class nowadays, you are not going to find more than 5-10 horsepower variants anymore. They're that tight, and that's why you see fields get tightly jumped, like they're bunched like they were at Indy. When you have a quality racetrack and you have 5 cracks at it, it's going to show that everybody's got about the same power.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember earlier in the season, we would get messages on social media like, oh, did you see so-and-so, in Pro Stock run this big mile per hour? And it's like, yeah, but they're not on the chip yet. Like, that's why. Like, all these other guys are on the chip, and so they're losing speed down there. You know what I mean? Like, they're getting to the end of the fuse, if you will, so much quicker that, it's a little bit of a mirage, I think, for some of these teams.
Yeah, it is. And it's hard to explain to the person sitting in the grandstand. That's very difficult. And I guess for that reason, I hate that we have a rev limit.
I was just getting ready to ask that. I mean, you guys were at the forefront of what was it called? Lobe lift. I mean, I remember talking to people about camshaft profiles. David Rear actually gave me one help. Brad Morgan is actually who it was. Darren Morgan gave me a hell of an education on this. And he said, Wes, the way we run these cars now is we're like trying to launch the lifter off this thing. It's so much different, and we are relying on that additional lift. Yeah. Do you miss that mad scientist stuff? I mean, I like tabling the fact that it would probably destroy the class overnight. I'm just curious. Do you miss that?
I do miss it. Jason Line misses it tenfold over me, and that's why you don't see him racing pro stock anymore. He just really. He hated the new rules package where he just felt that his hands were tied behind his back and he couldn't do what he wanted to do. That's fun to him. He really, and he's made no bones about telling the world, I could care less about driving these things. I like to work on them. I like to make power. And when that rule change came and number one, you had to figure out how to turn on a laptop computer. Both he and I were certainly of the Stone Age. We don't even, we don't know how to turn on a computer, let alone tune it with the fuel injection. So it's just been a struggle trying to get Jason to buy into this whole deal. But it is what it is. You got to roll with the times. You got to change with the times, and he struggled with it. He's a carburetor guy. He's an unlimited guy. That's why he left NASCAR and came to drag racing, because he loved the opportunity to spread your wings and basically try whatever you could possibly come up with in that crazy mind of yours. And it got to the point over NASCAR where you could do that. They had your hands tied behind your back, and they limited you on everything you could do. So that's why he loved the move back to drag racing. And then it got tough again where things clamped down. But yes, it has probably made it where the class is certainly more even.
I think it'd have been in the ditch personally. Yeah. I mean, it just, the R&D. Well, actually, I think we would have seen people talk about it in America all the time, like the diminishing of the middle class, the haves and the have-nots. Well, it would have been very wide in pro stock, because there had only been you and your team, Elite Motorsport, the people that had an in-house engine shop. Nobody else can really play that game, right?
Yeah. And it's like we want to sit here and complain about that. We don't have anything to complain about like they do over in Cup World over there. They're getting changed every month, every year, complete makeovers to bunch them all up tighter to restrict, the bigger teams or whatever from running away. So, as much as we want to complain, try that gig over there.
Yeah, no, thank you. A couple of last questions, and Greg, thank you so much. You're an incredible guest, incredible interview, and I appreciate your candor and you being so gracious with your time today. Two things. One, what was at the height of the no rev limiter deal, what was the highest RPM that 500-inch engine ever turned when you were going through the traps? I mean,
we were close to 12,000, Wes. It was getting kind of crazy, no doubt about it. I'll admit that. So, I know NHRA had to do something, and it just was such a big move for us. 1,500 RPM, and that was like a punch to Jason Line in the gut. So that
he's probably still recovering.
He's still stung, yeah.
and then last thing, just going through one of the big conversations. I mean, he's in your camp, 00 Dallas. The expectation of a driver, for those that don't know, I'm talking about Dallas Glenn. I was right here saying I don't know, and sometimes I stick my foot in my mouth, because I said all throughout last year, we own it, shit happens. But I just didn't know that young man is capable. Can that be sustained, right? Because I go, listen, I'm as big a fan of Dallas Glenn as there is. And I looked at last year, though, and I think, to be honest, which is my job here, I didn't think he could keep that going. Like, I don't know. Like, I just cannot imagine. Well, he has proved me wrong, and he did very well proving me wrong this past weekend. And I'm just curious, how are you handling this newfound pressure on the drivers, knowing that we got these Quadra boys that seem to drink coffee and go 00. It's incredible. How have you risen to the occasion? Because I'm encroaching 40, and I can tell I work a little different than I used to. Right.
Well, obviously, it's frustrating for me because I can't do that anymore. The one good thing about it, and you saw it in the final round, I don't have that worry of red lighting. Okay. I can try as hard as I possibly can, and it's going to come up green. Right. I just hope it's not too green. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Dallas and the Quadra boys, and obviously Erica, sometimes they always have to have that in the back of their mind. have I gone too far here? Do I push too hard? What if I stage a little bit deeper? And that's probably what got Dallas in the final. He probably staged an inch deeper, and it cost him a couple thousands on the tree. So I don't have that issue. That's a different problem they have. But yeah, I'd love to have the problem they got. I guess it's pretty incredible. And can they sustain it? Yeah, for a while. But it seems like the longer and the longer you do this, don't ask me why, but it becomes more difficult. Your head becomes more clouded. You learn more about what's going on around you. You think more about it. You hear more. You feel more. And then all of a sudden, your mind is not able to 100,000% only focus on that Christmas tree. And I can remember back in the day when I started, it was a whole lot easier for me too. It just, as years go by, your mind gets clouded with all the other things going on, and you basically learn too much, I guess, when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I mean, you got a wife, you got kids, you got a business to run, you got payroll on Friday. You know, this guy's mad, that guy's mad. I forgot to call him back. You know what I mean, or whatever. And yeah, because I sometimes think, like, I think about some of these young drivers in the class, like Camry Caruso, you know, that are up there. And I mean, God bless, she's worked hard to get where she's at, but to some extent, she's kind of playing with house money. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's just, and I do find it interesting because our sport is so unique because there's a handful of quote unquote pro drivers. There's a slew of hobbyists, right? People that are there and it's their golf game. You know, they're having fun with their friends and they're partying at night. And it's just this really eclectic group of people. But it's interesting to see what different folks have to do to stand at the top. Greg, thank you so much for your time here. Before you bounce, we don't get to do this very often. Why don't you help me welcome our next guest? Incredible performance this past weekend at the NHRA US Nationals. I don't know. I mean, you think about qualifying number one, winning the shootout, the specialty race, and then winning the race. I mean, you're getting up there with like Elvis Presley and Tupac. You know what I mean? Like you're moving into really rare air. Greg, help me introduce our next guest, the one, the only Ron Capps.
Okay, here we
go. What's going on? Do you guys hang out a lot?
Well, we need to because he's pretty damn cool, and obviously look at the guy. He looks like, you know,
he's Hollywood, right?
Who's the best looking dude you can possibly think of, right?
Ron Capps. I didn't have to think about it. Yeah.
And so everything's right there for him. You know, he's got to beat a ball of women away with a stick. And obviously he's got a beautiful wife and family. So he's got it made. When he told me the other day he had not won in Indy, I was like, you got to be kidding me.
I know.
As many big stages as I've shared winner circles with Ron Capps. And it seems like all the big races I win, there's Ron Capps right next to me. So it's always a great day when you're in a winner circle with Ron Capps. And damn proud of him. He took all the money this weekend. He won everything there was to get. So he's the star of the weekend as far as I'm concerned. I had a little bit of a special moment, but this guy, he won it all. And here you are, folks, Ron Capps.
What an intro, Ron. How about that? This guy just won 100 pro stock races, his 100th win. Him and John Force, the only ones to do it. And here he is giving you an intro like that.
I know. We've had pretty good moments. And I asked him how many times. It was embarrassing because he said, you just won Indy your first time? I said, yeah. I go, how many times you won? And he rattled off 8 or 9 or I don't know.
Seventh, right? Second only to Bob Glidden.
Yeah. And then I gave him crap about milking his whole 100 thing that long. So
it seemed a little Don Prudhomme final strike-ish to me.
Right,
like, how many of these shirts can we sell? You know, we're going to ride this out as long as we can.
No, it's cool. And it's so cool because we're sort of related with the HendricksCars.com and my teammate Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson, all those guys. So I love what he does. And we've shared a lot of winner circles. So when I see his win light come on, a lot of time I'm the next one in the water box. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. So
it's the same way for me, man. If he runs first and he wins, this is going to be a good day for me. Yep.
That's awesome. Hey, Greg, thank you so much for joining us, brother. Congratulations to your whole team. Tell Cody, everybody, hello from us, and we'll see you at the next one. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you, brother. Holy moly, Ron Capps in the house. What's going on, buddy? Let me pay some bills here real quick and remind everybody that the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by way of our friends at flowracing.com. If you're a drag racer or a drag racing fan, you got to get on board with Flow Racing. The world leader in sports live streaming, Flow Racing provides unlimited access to drag racing's biggest events like Donald Long's Lights Out, No Mercy, and Sweet 16, every stop on the PDRA and NMCA tours, Funny Car Chaos, World Cup Finals, Streetcar Super Nationals, and much, much more. The coolest part, other than being able to watch this stuff 24/7 on any device that you want, you can, excuse me, on top of all of this, Flow Racing is contributing to the growth of our sport. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. The partnerships formed by Flow Racing with promoters in drag racing serve only to grow drag racing and put racers and events in front of more eyeballs. The platform provided by Flow Racing is absolutely positively changing the sport for the better, and there's no limit to the good they can do here. So log on to flowracing.com today and join the movement. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a hell of an introduction there from the one and only Greg Anderson, fresh off 100 wins in NHRA Pro Stock. But now we've got the man of the hour. I went completely insane about this at the beginning of the show, Ron, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about it, buddy.
Hold on. I'm sharing
Oh,
sharing your show on my Facebook page.
My
right?
man.
It's live.
Listen to this. Everybody out there, Ron Capps runs his own social.
Yeah, but we are live, right? So I'm
we're absolutely live.
Share. Okay.
Yeah,
we're good.
Yeah.
All right.
We're absolutely live.
Ron,
dude, you won $180,000 this weekend. I just think that, and I don't mean to make you uncomfortable, but to be honest, I think this is a huge victory for the sport of drag racing. When payouts go down, when bad things happen, people can't wait to pile on. People can't wait to tear the NHRA to shreds. But we have a weekend like we had, packed stands, incredible race weekend. And we've got a guy like you fresh out on his own as a team owner, driver, walks away with $180,000. Can you kind of put that into perspective for us? I mean, that's got to be like tabling how it impacts the team. I mean, are you able to walk around with your chest puffed out a little bit? I mean, you put almost $200,000 in the bank this weekend.
No, I learned a long time ago. You don't. And Roland Leon really taught me the lesson. And it was, don't forget, on your way up the ladder to the top of whatever you're doing, when you're running well, don't forget that when you're not, and everybody will not run well at some point in their career, at least a few times, unless you're Greg Anderson, and not very often, but you're going to run into those same people going back down that you did on the way up. Sir. So you be respectful on the way up. And I learned that was adamant lesson from Roland Leon and Don Prudhomme. So yeah, it was a great, that whole weekend reminded me of the Snake when he would come in and sweep, and Bernstein and those guys, and just steal all the money on a weekend. But to go low qualifier as well, I'm not sure how many times that happened. We could check with our stat people, but
yeah, somebody, JT, ask Josh Hatchett how many times that happened, will you? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious. Just Guido, John Mellon, our guys, and it's, it gets to be cliche, and you don't want to sound like, oh, my guys did this, my guys did that. But in the confines of our little lounge, with Guido and Medlin work, the war room, I call it. I can't tell you how many times he told me, just Guido and I talking with Medlin, how unbelievably consistent our guys. And and I've been on your show many times to try to explain to the small tire people, all the fans that the pro mods, a lot of things, in those cars to go right have to happen to be consistent. But for our cars, 12,000 horsepower, to stick it to the ground, to go 0 to, 286 or 87 miles an hour at half track, and to go 380s, so much has to go right for these cars to do it. And then you change conditions like we had at Indy, which were extreme. I mean, Friday night we had unbelievable, and it came in, and clouds were coming in and out all day. And if you weren't there at the track and you were a fan, it was crazy, because the meteorologist in Indy, and you and I ran into each other at San Elmo's early in the weekend. It was a great forecast coming in.
I know. What happened?
Everybody complained, oh my God, it's going to be hot, this and that. And then chance of rain every day. And every morning you get up and you watch the local news, it's going to rain all day. So everybody's going there with just like the worst, feeling about how the day was going to go. And we ended up getting all of our runs in, and we got the races in, and we finished everything. And then guess what? We won the whole race Monday, and then the sun came out, and it was like 80 bazillion degrees in the winter circle. So what my point is, our team, I can't even tell you how consistent and good they were to give Medlin and Guido that car. And then I had to go up there and not mess it up. And I told Amanda a few times, I go, I feel like this, every round, even the call out thing, I said, this is my race not to mess up. I got to not mess this up. And it worked out.
Do you have conversation? Because to your point, Ron, I mean, I hope folks out there listening understand I mean, my go-to joke, Ron, is it's hard to win tic-tac-toe 4 times in a row, right? Let alone win a drag race 4 times in a row, let alone do it in a 12,000 horsepower nitro funny car. So what do you point to produce 388, 388, 388, 391? Because I mean, I think about the amount of times I've seen cars go to the starting line and parachutes fall out, not starters screwed up. You know, I mean, how proud are you of that group? Because I know Guido and Medlin get a ton of credit, but I mean, when I go over to your pits, and I got to give a shout out to Don Schumacher hooking us up and letting us hang out in the DSR hospitality. Thank you as well, because I know that doesn't happen without your blessing. But when I'm over there, I see the same guys busting their ever-loving asses. I mean, let's talk about this group of guys, because it's, you know, you're on here, you're being interviewed, but I know that you wouldn't be here today, and you wouldn't have been in the winter circle on Monday without a whole bunch of busted knuckle boys and girls.
Yeah, it's you know, we got put together again the beginning of 2021. My longtime crew chief Ron Tobler retired, 11th hour. Beckman and those guys didn't have a sponsor, and Don didn't have anything for him. And we got put together, I mean, with a week to go before preseason testing, and heading to Florida to testing. So, and then we went on to win a world championship together. But to back up, Guido and I have been friends a long time. We got to be friends when I was a rookie in Top Fuel. And back when I drove the Top Fuel dragster, I did win my rookie year, but it was myself and the crew chief that drove the rig on the road. We had fly-in guys mostly that worked on the team, and I worked on the car as well as got to drive the race car. But that was me and Terry Manzer driving down the road in the 18-wheeler and filling logbooks out and booking hotels. And, you know, it was that's when I became friends with Guido. He was a cylinder head guy on John Force's car. So we became friends then and stayed. It's just weird how our careers just kept going up and up and up and up. And then we finally got to work together.
Wow. So
we win a championship together. I have this chance to go be an owner. And, you know, obviously he was my first choice, and the team went with me, and it's just been magical. So I approach it, and I might have talked to you about this. I know the success here lately in the races we won has been because when I won in the past, I've approached it as I walk in the pit area in the morning, and I'm going to try to make my very best effort to make my crew chief proud. I don't even think about the owners. Back when I drove for Snake, it was Roland Leong or Ed the Ace McCulloch. That was my job that day, to do everything the best I could. And those crew chiefs, you usually didn't hear from them. And if you didn't, that was okay, because that meant you did something right. If Ace never said a word to you, you were doing the right stuff, right? If he had to say something to you, you were out of the groove, or you didn't do something right. You knew you did, something wrong. So I've always approached it that way. And that's when I've had the best success driving the car and getting up on the wheel and doing whatever I got to do. And so here this year, like right now, my wife's in here, we're doing invoices and all the business.
Happy birthday, right? Isn't she just celebrating her birthday?
Yeah, yesterday and today and this weekend we're having a
birth
UFC
week.
Party.
That's what my wife calls it.
Birth
Birth
house with a bunch of people, which they're great parties, and so it's going to be a week-long celebration. Trust me. And we got the belt somewhere that all.
Oh yeah, you got to have that thing out on Saturday night during the UFC pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Are you a Nate Diaz guy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't
too.
like him early on, but
Me
I became
too.
a fan later on. Yeah, and Ferguson.
You gotta have. You gotta love. He drives me crazy with some of the stuff he says, Nate Diaz, but man, he just owns it. You know what I mean? Like, make no bones about it. I am who I am. I'm going to say whatever I think, whenever I think it, and live with the consequences. As someone, on the other side of it in the media world, I go, man, what a gold mine that guy is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And Nick, his brother, I invited them to Sonoma, and I thought they were coming last year, and I invited them again this year. Nate was
got to get him out to a race.
I know. And so it was cool. They answered back on Instagram, and we had a conversation. So we're going to have that party. But to the point of just not clouding my brain with all of what's going on in my head with the business and being a new owner, it's a lot of stuff that's overwhelming. But I try to do all the right stuff. Indy's a perfect example. Like Brainerd, we have such success there because we get in early, we go fishing, we hang out with the Napa people, we go out in the zoo, we have drinks with them on Thursday before the race kicks off, and you feel the mojo building, and you feel you just feel it. And I think you can't point what it is, but my record with different crew chiefs and teams is pretty good at Brainerd. And I feel like it's because you become part of what that area is. So we got into town in Indy. We went out on Guido's and Kelly's houseboat. We ate at Rick's Boatyard.
Great spot.
Boat with my wife and a bunch of buddies that came in. My cousin Donnie and all of them drove all the way out from California. Then St. Elmo's, saw you there Wednesday night. We have our usual Napa dinner Thursday night, and then we'd go to Boulder Creek on Saturday night. It's just this thing we do every year, and so I just felt it building. And so I think the success was that kind of not changing, but doing what we normally do that race weekend, and then also trying to show up and what I love to what your question was is my guys, the rock and roll is playing. It's not quiet. It's not super loud, but in the pit area you walk in, you hear it. Everybody's loose. They're having a good time. And
I agree.
There's no stress. There's no, I'm not somebody I don't think hard to work for. I expect everybody there to do is.
Yeah. Nobody's on pins and needles. Nobody's like what do they say? A hat on, or a cat on a hot tin roof. Cause you see that. I mean, I'm not trying to call anybody out, but there are pits you can go into and you can sense an air of, people are worried they're going to screw up or do the wrong thing. And oh my God. And there's none of that in your pit area.
Listen, if I wanted to have a job I was that stressful going to, I would have gone to work at a bank. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're blessed to work where, and nothing wrong working at a bank. It's just,
for sure.
It's like this. And so, I love that part of it. And I absolutely, it's Guido's team. And honestly, during a race weekend, if somebody comes to me with a question, anything about the team, even business-wise, I refer to Guido. And so that's the way we approach it. It's absolutely his call on everything within the team during a race weekend. And I'm not even, until I look up on the awning and see my name, I don't even think of myself as an owner. And so that's worked pretty good. And I think if we continue to do it, I got a great team manager in Paul Mecca that handles all this other stuff. And Allison, my PR person, and Cassandra Powell does my social media for our race team. And that is a core of our group right there. And I'm going to post a picture on my social later today. And we always get a picture in a winner circle. My wife, Paul Mecca, Allison, and Cassandra. And that is the core. I knew it was important to have good social media. And I love what Cassandra does. She works for Steve Torrance's wife, Natalie. And
the Powell family are perhaps some of my favorite people in drag racing.
Powell's are great. And then, of course, Allison McCormick has been with me for quite a while. And
she's a rock star.
She was with me at DSR. She got me on a Howard Stern show a couple of times. We do very well together. She gets really cool stuff away from drag racing and things outside the box. And I always thought that was cool. So, I just think if I approach every weekend like that, and that's what happened last weekend, then we're going to have success through the countdown.
I'm curious. You went to Indy, if I'm correct, and we did a little research on this for the first time in 1995. I think you may have missed it in 96, and we're back in 97. But 27 years ago, and I guess I just want to plainly ask you, was it worth the wait?
Well, I was there before that. I was a crew member before I drove. We've had this conversation, but. Grew up near Blaine and Alan Johnson. So Blaine and Alan, good friends, and I hung out with Blaine a lot growing up. And I used to go stay in his room when he drove. And back in the old days of the Carcraft banquets, which were phenomenal events. And then working on Jim Rizzoli's car, who he bought all of Alan and Blaine's equipment, I would go out there and sometimes help Jim tow the car out there. So I was there a long time as a crew guy. And then my first year driving, of course, I think Alcohol Dragster in 2000 or 94, and then of course 95 with the being a rookie in Top Fuel. So it's been worth the wait. I mean, really, as professional, 97 first year with Don Prudhomme. That's kind of the year that my wife started going with me, and it was always her birthday weekend, being on the 6th. So it's been a long time coming. We've tried everything. We used to go out the campground at the drive-in. If anybody's ever been at that old campground back in the day, you know what I'm talking about. And we would try approaching it like it was the biggest race in the world, and that never worked. We tried just another race, and that almost worked. And then we almost won it last year and got wilked by Tim Wilkerson in the final round. So it was just unique how everything kind of came together and went from not being able to win to low qualifier, winning the call out, which was awesome. And then, of course, winning the race.
It was an incredible performance from your group. I mean, we talked about the consistency, the performance, you rising to the occasion. Let's talk briefly about. I got a bunch of questions here, but let's talk about the Pep Boys All-Star call out. I mean, huge shout out to the whole team at Pep Boys for putting the money up for this deal. Fantastic thing for the sport of drag racing. First and foremost, were you glad to see the race within a race return to the U.S. Nationals?
Yeah, I've got 3 trophies in the house here, the old Big Butt Shootouts, and that was 1998. I won my first one. We won it with that special snakeskin car, and then we burned it to the ground first round. Got back to pit area, and fans were helping, rolling, and the team put it back together. And I was burned, but I got in the car, and we ended up winning the whole thing. So I've got great memories of those. That's what made Indy. And as a funny car guy, listen, those years were Freddie Neely and Chuck Etchells and Jim Epler and John Force, of course, Al Hoffman. So I was this snot-nosed kid coming into funny car amongst some of the baddest funny car dudes ever to drive. So that was a special event to qualify for. If you were, as it is now, if you were one of the top 8, look, J.R. Todd's team didn't make that, which is unbelievable how good that car is. And that just tells you how tight things had to be throughout the year, and you could not make a mistake. So yeah, to answer your question, I was so glad to have it back. And of course, Pep Boys, I won't lie to you. I mean, obviously it's somewhat of a competitor of Napa Auto Care. And it was cool because we had the Napa people at HQ let us run a Napa Auto Care car at Indy, and we're going to run it again at Maple Grove. And I love that competition. And I think it's great. I love the fact that our Toyota ran the Chevy in the final and won the Dodge race, so it really.
Don't you think a certain amount of that is like good? Like, because there have been times in the past when I've gotten a little bit bummed out because I'm going to take this a little bit deep, but I teach this to my team and I preach this to my group that you have to be very weary of a scarcity mindset, and a scarcity mindset breeds, the belief system that like, hey, we've got one auto parts store here, no more. Right? We got one energy drink company here, no more. We got one cell phone company here, no more. That's the product of a scarcity mindset. I mean, with 7 billion people on the planet, I promise you there's enough to go around, right? And I think that competition is healthy and it develops storylines, and you got to you got to recognize that a surplus. There are plenty of people to go buy parts, right? And everybody's going to pick and choose whatever they want to do. And I'm proud of you just as a man and a human being, because there are plenty of people in our space that won't even speak a competitor's name or what have you. Man, a high tide lifts all boats, right? What Pep Boys did in Indy was good for everybody, including Napa.
It was great for me.
It was great for Ron Capps, right?
But you got to walk that line sometimes. And
man,
kids ask you about sponsorships and advice, junior drags for kids even. And, it would have been, I'm glad Paul Mecca, my team manager, was at the top end. And the first round, we went that 386 and getting interviewed by Amanda for the show. He said, put the hat on, because I was worried. Are we okay putting the Pep Boys on? And that's what's great. And it is. It's they came in and put a lot of money up. They've been at the racetrack with big setups. And ironically, they've been close to our Napa Auto Parts team pit area. But it's great. And I talked to the CEO. I went right over to him at the autograph session and said, thank you for doing this. And he said, hey, man, we still buy on Napa Auto Parts at times as well. So Pep Boys they don't sell parts anymore. And so that really changed things up. And so anyway, listen, I've been with Napa for 17, 18 years now. So if we were out there sucking, it might have been a different story. I may not have been so gracious, but you've always got to think about, gear wrench tools we have. You got to think about certain sponsors and where you walk and what hat you put on for special events. But at the same time, it's bad karma, I think, to take it too far and not accept that. So, yeah.
So as a team owner now, and I appreciate your candor and being so gracious with your time. I mean, I say that a lot, but I truly mean it. Like spending a half hour with us on a Wednesday afternoon, it's not lost on me. So thank you, Ron. And thanks, Shelly, for signing off on this. Ron, whenever you think about, to have a brand like Napa, holy moly, who has really gotten behind you. We've seen you in commercials, the cardboard cutouts at stores. My dad actually runs a Napa approved auto care center in Northeast Missouri. I mean, you're a big part of their marketing vehicle. I'm sure it was never lost on you, but do you have even a newfound or an increased and amplified appreciation for their belief in you as a team owner today?
Oh, absolutely. And they had a kind of a new regime come into their
Oh, really?
marketing department, I'd say, or sponsorships for the most part. That and it scares a lot of people. Andretti's team was sponsored by him, of course, Hendrick with Chase Elliott. So nobody knew it was going to happen. And at the same time, I had told Don Schumacher, in Indy, that I was not coming back. Didn't have a contract for the following year, and I was going to try to become an owner. And I had a couple things we were working on, but I was hoping Napa would just come on board as a partial sponsor at that point. And later on, to get the phone call, it was a big deal. Marty, who was hired, she was the first person hired. She came on and took over sponsorships, and nobody knew her that well. She came from Coca-Cola. Big Al from Coke had talked to her, and she said she'd already gotten a conversation about me and what we did while Powerade and all those brands were there. She turned around and hired 4 more women, and I think 3 of them came from Coke, and that's our new group at Napa Auto Parts. And so they were the phone call that I got that they wanted to be a part and me to be the Napa guy going forward was huge. And this is the middle of the countdown last year. So we were fighting for a world championship. And then all of a sudden I am working on a sponsor, and then I'm not sure what's going to happen. And they stepped up and said, we want to be a part of it, with 2 races to go in the countdown. And so you talk about bizarre background white noise going on while you're trying to win a world championship. That was huge. So to know I was going to carry on my relationship with Napa Auto Parts, to have little kids and strollers and come up with parents of the pit area and go, Napa guy, and point at me. That's huge. I mean, that's something you dream about. And I always knew Napa Auto Parts would be a dream sponsor for a race car driver. And the way it happened was unbelievable. And I'm blessed.
It's an incredible thing to have watched, Ron. And what do you make of, I got a couple more for you before we cut you loose. Whenever you came into this season, had you kind of like sat down with the family or like mentally prepared yourself to struggle? Like, did you accept that as a potential, hey, we're making a seismic change here. We're doing this all ourselves. Had you kind of made that conscious, like kind of accepted that, hey man, we may have a little fall from grace here. Not to say we can't rebound, but had you prepared yourself for that?
Yeah. And my brother, Antron Brown, Wilkerson, Force, these guys were calling me daily in the off season, and I was a mess at times. You own your own business. And a lot of people watching this, especially our Napa Auto Care people are tuned into this, I'm sure. Yes. And Antron warned me. He said, don't count the money that you're going to win because it may not come, and you can't count this, can't count that. I didn't have a manufacturer, and then Toyota stepped up, and it's going to make me emotional right now. But that phone call I got the morning of the PRI show, that they did want to be a part of what I was doing. And if I could wait until they got more super bodies, around the 4-wide at Charlotte, they would love to be a part of it. And that was life-changing for me. And since then, I had no idea how life-changing it would have been, what Toyota did.
Because they believe in you, Ron. I got goosebumps, brother.
Yeah,
like
you
can sense it. Like, and I hope you're holding up your end of the bargain, man. I mean,
well, I've watched JR Todd. I've watched Antron, especially those 2 guys being really good friends, and and been jealous of what they've done. Listen, I have Martin Truex was my teammate, Michael Waltrip. They've all had the Toyota relationship, and I've been around them, so I was always kind of watching that. So that was huge, and that took a little load off of me for sure, and that helped me feel like I had some stability. We don't have a small budget by any means, and it's not a huge budget, but we've got a pretty good budget, and we get all the good parts that we want. We run DSR parts. We knew that I knew the success we had in 2021, that I wanted to do whatever Guido wanted, and that was to keep running what we did in 2021. Cylinder blocks of DSM and dart and sleeves, and CHE valve train, which is big with all the small tire stuff and all those engine builders out there. Like I said, dart sleeves, comp cams, all the stuff that I don't mention a lot in interviews, but I like to post on social media. These people came calling. I got phone calls from, I had seen stickers on other cars. I've had them on my car before at DSR. They legitimately wanted to be a part of what I was doing as a team owner. And to your point, nobody knew if I was going to make it or I was going to fail. So I had clear visions of maybe I might fail, but I felt like I had enough people. Listen, John Forrest would call me and say, I know you're not running my parts. I know you don't have the same sponsors, but I love you. And if you need anything, you need a loan. I mean, for a guy that I race my livelihood against, Wilkerson offered up, parts and cars. And at one point, I'll just say this, and at one point he offered to get out of his car if it came to the point where I couldn't work a deal out to buy trailers and cars, and what I ended up doing, that he would get out of his car and put a car out there for me. And so,
are you serious?
there
Hell
could
yeah,
have
I'm
been
gonna
a
get
chance-
emotional.
There might have been a chance I was driving Guido tuning a Tim Wilkerson car this year. You just don't know. He's a Napa Auto Care guy. So
I've been to a shop in Springfield, Illinois. Yeah.
So the brochures you see at Napa Auto Care, anytime you see one, that is Tim's shop, honest to God. So people may not know that at home.
I don't think we can sing. I'm not trying to take this a different direction, but Tim Wilkerson is proof positive that the dream is real. The Nitro dream is alive. I mean, you can roll by, Tim's shop. I mean, these guys are changing oils, fixing people's transmissions, putting intake gaskets on Dodge Caravans because almost all of them need them. I mean, he's the real deal, and he's going nitro racing. We tried to have him on this show, and the phone wouldn't stop ringing up long enough for him to do the interview. I mean, to hear that bring in the
He's
background,
a working dude, man. I mean,
it's incredible.
He drives it, but and that's why he's got so many fans, and that's why I love him. He's my favorite guy, or one of my favorites out there, and we have to race him, unfortunately, at times. But so there was a lot going on, but Don Schumacher really helped me this first year. So to that point, I was prepared for the worst, we showed up at Pomona West, number one qualifier, and then went to the final round and lost to Robert Hite by about that much. And I thought, oh my God, I am so glad I made the decision I did, and I'm so glad that Guido and that we just kind of did what we did. So yeah, it's been great. And then to go on and win the first, to win my first race as Ron Capps Motorsports, then to win the Super Body's first race, and now to do what we did, that all helps. And believe me, the income coming in from those race wins are going to help us tremendously. But there's a lot of money going in and out. My wife is typing over here, and I can hear it. And I've never seen so many zeros in my life in a bank account that had my name on it going back and forth. And that's just part of it. Cruz Padragon, all these guys that just had advice for me, and it's been great. It's a great challenge, but the best part is every weekend, Wes, I will get fans on a daily basis. I bet there's 100 at least on a daily basis come up, and they will get right in and they will grab me by the shoulders. I'm out there signing, I'm not looking up. Sometimes you sign, and they'll stop me and they'll grab me by the shoulders and make sure I'm looking them right in the eye. And they say, we are so proud of what you're doing. It's like, I've had people hand me checks that $100 out of a personal account because they wanted to be a part of helping what I was doing. And I can't take it, but it's like, hey, let me go grab a couple of shirts to sign for you, because the offer is crazy. So that has been the best part, to have our fans come up and want to be a part and so excited for us. That kind of daily.
Man, it's thank the good Lord for that, man. We need Ron Capps out here. We need Ron Capps winning. You were a fantastic ambassador for the sport of drag racing, Ron. I've been a fan of yours for 100 years, and I remember seeing you for the first time. I can't remember. It was so crazy seeing your face, like not
Eddyville.
on TV.
Probably
Eddyville
right?
Raceway Park in the Copenhagen car.
Yeah.
Why were the front wheels on that thing white? It pissed me off. Were they
That's
shoe
old.
polished up? That was the old style thing, right?
That's old. That's Roland Leong.
Really?
There were guys that got red lit with their wheels being chrome and shiny.
Yeah.
And it was a secret they used back in the day with shoe polish. And you would think that all the timing systems in the year 2000, that wouldn't happen, but that was Roland Leong. That was cool about having all my crew chiefs are all old school crew chiefs. And I loved that part about it.
Oh man, what a deal. Do you miss the match racing days? Like when
I
you
do.
were at Norwalk a couple weeks ago? I mean, what a deal. Shout out to Bill Bader Jr. God bless that family going through a rough 2022. But man, that event, the Night Under Fire, holy moly. Do you miss that type of stuff?
Yeah, there's Night of Fire in Boise and Night Under
Yes.
Fire. And unfortunately, the same weekend, I love both places. I do miss that. I love driving nostalgia cars. I've done a bunch of those. Eddyville is another one. We did the 4th of July, and I drove the crop duster.
What's Donnie's buddy's name that owns the crop duster?
Bill Wyndham,
I met him for the
brothers.
first time this past weekend, man. What a guy.
Yeah, great guy. He's got the Burkholder Brothers fuel altered I drove at the March meet. So we're going to try and book some of that in next year as well. And for the fans, I'm not going to break any news here, but there's a special treat coming in Vegas. And I'll just say that with the nostalgia world, and it's going to be pretty cool. So our NHRA fans are going to be pretty cool.
Well, buddy, we'll be there with bells on. Ron, congratulations. Hell of a weekend. Tell your better half hello. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. And I guess we'll see you at Maple Grove, all right?
You got it, man. See you guys.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate you, buddy. Holy moly, guys. I want to remind you all, and hey, real quick, holy shit, is this real life? Right? I mean, we're talking to Greg Anderson. We're talking to Ron Capps. We're fitting to talk to Lyle Barnett. We're telling stories. We're shooting the breeze. It's hard to even believe that this is real life. Pinch me. There's no one around to pinch me, unfortunately. But thank you guys for being a part of this. And I want to thank someone really special, Mark Beatty, the whole gang at Redline Synthetic Oils. This show each and every week would not be here without these guys. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. Trust me when I tell you, real knows real. When you know, and the Redline oil guys are the real deal. JT, are you still here? I've been on my solo for a hot minute, man.
I am, man.
Are we killing this deal or what?
Yeah.
Jeez Louise, man. It's sometimes like I wonder what's next. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we're whacking the throttle on a Top Fuel car last week. We're doing the show at JFR, John Force Racing. We're doing the show in the tower at Indy. But now we're like literally having casual, candid conversations with the biggest names in drag racing. What's Lyle Barnett doing? Let's get this guy.
Those are good stories too. I wonder what Lyle is doing.
What is Lyle doing? Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the NHRA U.S. Nationals. Can you believe it? Drag racing's favorite son, the one, the only Lyle Barnett. Let's up, go. Brother? Let's go. Let's go, man. Dude, I'm so sorry that we weren't there. I had to go home. Somebody's got to work for a living, you know. But I'm just curious, man. You knew. You knew when you were in the rental car on Friday morning. You knew.
JT,
you knew,
shut
didn't
up.
you?
Did
you not know? Because he's looking at me. He's like, "Oh, they ain't got enough in that laptop. There ain't none of these guys out here. There ain't enough up arrow manipulation that can be done to take care of me." And you were right, brother.
Man.
Did you know? Did you know?
I picked him.
JT did pick me.
I did.
And I don't know, man. It's weird. Like we've had what did I tell Jessica Hatcher? We've had just a less than stellar year, I guess. Like, yeah, we went to the final at the 4 wides, but I mean, I've turned it red when it mattered. We just haven't ran well. And we ran really well in Brainerd. We just were beside the man that went low for the first round of eliminations, right. Jose Gonzalez in the first round, which is kind of my luck. But I don't know, man. I just had a feeling that things were going to turn around. And I did tell you that on the way to the track Friday morning before I'd ever even fired the car up in Indy.
True story, guys. We're riding to the racetrack. Lyle's not feeling so good, but he looked me square in the eyes, and it was almost uncomfortable. Because I said something nonchalant, like, "So, what do you think, man? You gonna have a good weekend this weekend? What's your thoughts?" And he was, "We're gonna win this whole deal. There ain't nobody here that's got anything for us." And I thought, I think he means this shit.
It was all that training. It was all that personal training I put him through for a few days.
Yeah. But I could tell you meant it, man. I could tell you meant it.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, I don't know. I had a feeling, and I'll be honest, when we were supposed to run first round of eliminations on Sunday afternoon, and judging by the three previous passes that I had made, I was not as confident. But we found the problem, found what was wrong. And Justin told me, he's like, "Dude, we're going back to tried and true. I just need you to go up there and let go of the button like you always do. And I think we've got a shot." Had we ran Sunday night and not Monday morning, would the outcome have been the same? I don't know. Probably not. Manzo would have probably went up there and went 71 or something like that. But lots of rain that afternoon. Conditions were pretty different the next day. Track was actually a lot better than I think most of us anticipated. The NHRA did a stellar job prepping the track this weekend. It was uncharacteristically good. But and I went up there. I didn't have a whole lot of confidence, and y'all know me well enough to know that when I've got confidence in the car, I'm hard to beat. But when I don't, I'm as beatable as anybody's ever been. And I didn't have a whole lot of confidence, but I decided before I pulled the water, I'm like, just go up there and rip loose of it. Let's try to go 0-0. And if we get outrun, we just get outrun. But God darn it, please don't get beat on a hole shot, because I would still be in Indy about this far head first into the sand trap, just bury my head down there if I got beat on a hole shot. And we flipped the script on that one and beat Castellano to the stripe by 2 thou.
Man, you went 0-13 in the first round, and I tried to explain to my wife. I was telling Alicia, I said, I get so wound up, like I almost jumped through the television. But people don't. I mean, you can go to your grave, Lyle. You beat Mike Castellana on a hole shot. Like, he's arguably one of the greatest levers in the history of pro modified drag racing. He's the last guy you want to race. Typically, I mean, generally speaking, Mike's a killer out here.
And Frank ain't no joke.
Oh, geez Louise, man. I mean, that's a dynamic duo it's like Alan Johnson, Tony Schumacher at their height. You know what I mean? Like, that's a powerhouse. We were going to do this story. I think we still do it, where I was going to do a breakdown of like the best crew chief driver combos. You know what I mean? Like, because they're in the mix. Frank Manzo and Mike Castellana have to be in the mix for one of the best tuner driver combos in history for as far as drag racing is concerned. And for you to trailer them in round one, I thought, all right, it's downhill from here. Like, I know that's saying a lot at NHRA Pro Mod. I think nobody said it more than me that is the final frontier for fast door slammer drag racing. But if you get them old boys out the way in E1, and I'm not saying it's smooth sailing, but that's a big one, right? Did you feel that way? Like, okay, that was the one we needed to go our way. Now, granted, you got some luck later in the day, but that could have been a final at any race in the country.
Yeah, we'll touch on the luck later in the day in a little bit, but I said, the rest of the day, especially after we had won, and I said it today talking to the guys in the shop, that when we won round one, we won that race. That's what won the race.
I agree.
It put the entire team, when we got back to the pit, everybody was spiffed up. We were freaking ready to go. I had my arch rival, J.R. Gray, next round, and I text you at the time after I beat Mike and told you that Mike Janis did not have enough in that laptop to overcome what I'm about to do to J.R. Gray on the starting line. I was hanging over the roof. I hadn't even gotten to the scales yet from the top end when I text you that, and I meant it. I was like,
I knew you did.
I don't care if J.R. Gray went 002. I was going 001. And I knew then. I was like, something bad's going to have to happen for us to lose today. And you could call Stevie Jackson on the phone right now, and he would tell you that no matter what happened the rest of the day, we weren't going to lose. And I had very little to do with that later in the day. But
you were there. I mean, like 0-11 in the final, obviously Carr misbehaved, but like you were on it, you know what I mean? But I think there is a truth. You said it in the winner's circle talking to Amanda Busick, who I think did a fantastic job this weekend. I watched her, directing traffic down there, yelling at people, moving people around. She did a great job. And you are so good on camera in those moments. It makes me proud to call you a friend. You're such a great ambassador for our sport. But it felt, you could kind of feel it. Right. I really do. I thought the same thing. When you got by Mike in E1, I go, oh, my God, I don't know how he fucks this up. Excuse my language. Like, because it just felt like it was happening. I could feel it happening. And then when it did, I mean, man, what a moment. I mean, let's talk about this, and let's be honest, man. You've been in every bad situation that drag racing can present. Right. In 2015, a whole lot of us that consider you a friend thought we were going to lose you, right? And now you're out here. Your mom and dad are on the starting line. You're winning the U.S. Can you just, for the people that have watched this whole transition, man, a lot has happened, right? 5, 6, 7 years now. Can you even begin to put into words? I mean, dude, what a triumph over tragedy, Lyle. We're so proud of you, buddy.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and you guys especially, and all the other media outlets. I'm not taking that away from anybody else, but all of you collectively as a whole have done just an outstanding job telling my story, because without the outreach, right, like my personal outreach on social media and these things is one thing, but when I've got, collectively probably 1 million eyes with all of you, right, like it helps, and it's no doubt a reason that I'm where I am today. Richard Freeman probably wouldn't have let me in one of his cars had I not had voices like yours and other people to vouch for me that I was capable of driving one of these things.
I told him you were the one.
Because they're not like, I don't care what anybody says. And then anybody that's driven one and be like, oh, they're not that hard. Get in that turbo car down there and rip down. And there's nothing wrong with NHRA prep. I'm not down in it. But follow the fuel cars in one of those things one time. Like it's freaking unbelievable, And like you get to the 8th mile where the majority of your pro mod racers are clicking them off. We got another 8th to go, and another 60 miles an hour most of the time, 50 miles an hour at least. But, man, I've been very fortunate to have been given the opportunity to drive some really nice stuff prior to my, emergence into the NHRA, right? Like I've driven some really nice stuff, and it's all kudos really to my dad. The majority of the time he's footed the bill in some way, shape, or form, but Jason Digby gave me an awesome opportunity after I wrecked, a state of the art Radio versus the World car when Radio versus the World were real cars. My dad had invested a bunch of money. Chad Branson had invested a bunch of money, and they let me drive it. And we literally watched that thing go up in flames in 2015, and Jason Digby was right there with a fresh, brand new single turbo, soon to be world record holding leaf spring car, and literally said, here you go, man. I'm going to pay for it. I want you to drive, and honestly, that is the true platform to where I am now. Right. Because before that, I'd driven a little bit X275. I'd been 460s or something like that in the 8th, which is nothing to turn your head at, but it's slow, slower compared to what we're going today, and Jason, I went 440s, 430s, 420s, 410s, and 4.0s, thanks to him. Right. And that kind of prepared me to take, and Pro Mod was the next step. Right. And, I guess I did a decent job driving most of the time, but it's the people I surrounded myself with that I kind of, leveraged on to get to
Man, you have a unique ability to rise to the occasion. I've seen it. I consider myself a student of this game, and you seem to be completely comfortable with the pressure of not having the fastest car necessarily, not having the most consistent car. Where does that, because your dad's a little steely eyed like that too. I don't know your dad from, yesteryear or whatever. I met your dad, Mark Barnett, for those that don't know, probably a little around a decade ago, probably first time our paths crossed, but he's got a little bit of that about him too. Where does that come from? I mean, is it because you really do seem to be massively, I preach it to my guys all the time. Like the quicker you want to be successful, how quick can you be comfortable being uncomfortable? Mm-hmm. And you thrive in that environment. Where does that come from? Grandpa, dad, what's the scoop?
Maybe, but even my dad, when the pressure's on and he's real nervous, is real nervous, like, I don't know, man. And I figured out how to swallow it, I guess. Like, you can feel that about right here. Yeah. And like, I'll be honest, I closed the door against JR Gray and was about to pull into the water box, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to swallow it or not, but like when I fire the car up and I pull through the burnout box, and like you, Richard Freeman, Erica, my dad, my whole crew standing there, and they're parting the ways for me to do a burnout by them, like I'm
right at home,
like I have one job when I'm in that thing and I do a burnout and I back up and listen to Justin in my ears. And my dad beats on the hood 400 or 500 times before he walks away from the car. I've got one job.
He did. I thought we're going to have to do some carbon fiber work after that deal.
Well, we did, but because you've got one job, and that's to not screw it up. Like go up there, stage the car like you've got some sense, understand who you're running in the other side, and know that they could play a game. They may not play a game. Be prepared for that. And when the 3 freaking yellow lights come on, let go. And now that thing, Red Velvet, there was much. Yeah,
let's talk us through some of these. So, what was it? Friday qualifying when it did like the full track wheel stand deal, yes, and didn't shift into high gear. Yes. Okay, so I gotta tell you, man. There's a bunch of them we could go through. The run on what was it Friday night when that thing sashayed from sea to shining sea. until you pulled the chutes.
Mhm.
That not a lot of people would have made that trip. I sent you that text and I stand by it. I'm looking at it right now and I said, hey, big dog, ain't a whole lot of people going to make that trip. And that was significant. But take me up through this wheel stand situation. So that thing's about the meanest,
Yeah.
power wheel stand, half track wheel stand car I've ever seen.
So if NHRA Pro Mod was 580 index, they would nobody touch us. Nobody. Like Justin's got the stator and the tune-up to go 580 flat. I'll 580 flat you to death. But we got to go 575, And so to do that, he has to reshape the boost curve. Most of the time we have to change the stator. And if not, what I call the wheelie stator, it'll go 580. It'll go 990 down low and go 265 or 6 to the middle and go 580 all day long. All day. But if you try to go 575, that thing is dragging the parachute mount. And so it did it in Brainerd, but we had it, maybe the track condition, whether it had a little grade to it or whatever. When it picked the front wheels up and I was looking at the tops of the scoreboards, I just knew that I wasn't going towards one or the other, which meant I had to have been going straight,
Close enough.
We're just going to ride it out. It sets down and does its little deal. And it was in the groove. Now at Indy, that was not doing that. And the run you're talking about was Saturday night.
Yeah.
And it was our last qualifier. And when I did the burnout.
Oh yeah. You weren't in the show.
I was, but 624 was on the board and that was me.
Yeah.
That was the bump spot. And I knew that there was a couple cars behind me that were probably going to go a 5 something, whether they went 595, they were bumping me out and they were on the outside. And so it picks the front wheels up. It's driving to the wall. And I'm like, I'm going to hold this thing as long as I can. And just before I knew that it was not recoverable, I just gave it one chop, just on the throttle. And it sat the front end down. I moved it back to the middle. And when I stabbed it, it sat out the other way. And I was like, well, there's only one thing that's going to stop this thing from wrecking, and that's the parachutes. So I threw those still in the throttle. And then right at the finish line, I just went ahead and chopped out, and the chutes kind of trued it up, and it went.
Because I didn't know you pedaled it when I text you, but now it makes sense. What was that, like 2.5, 3 seconds in? 4?
It was on down there. Yeah,
it was down there.
Yeah,
because it was going side to side, and you just don't see them down there, especially at this stage in the game. The cars are so good, the tuners are so good. Typically, the tracks are so good. You just don't see them down there in trouble like that.
Well, what we had figured out is that probably in Topeka, when I hit the wall, we actually had a chassis bar broke in the back there. So that's why it was driving. So, and after that run, when I got back, I said, dude, I imagined that a NASCAR driver would come over the radio and be like, this thing is so loose, it's just not drivable. Because literally that's where we were at. And so they pulled the wheels off, got up under there, found the crack, welded it up. We put the other stator back in. And when I raced Mike Castellano on Monday morning, it went, just straight as a string. So I was driving it with a broke chassis is what we figured out, and
that makes a lot of sense because, people fail to realize oftentimes how violent these pro mod cars are, and it's like, it's not at all a surprise to weld up an X-Brace or, nobody's in trouble. We're not talking out of turn. Yeah.
If they shake the tires, they're breaking stuff, they're just not designed to do that. But
when that thing goes up on the bars like that, because in the first round of qualifying or whatever, when it went way up on the bars, it went to 330.
It didn't shift.
Yeah, that's when it didn't shift. So what's going through your are you anticipating okay, got to really rev myself up here because some bad shit's about to happen, but we've got to make it. Because do you know? Because you just talked about the wheelie stator. So do you go up there and go through the water and know that this is probably going to be a sketchy one?
It all depends on if Justin gives me the old, hey man, hang on, right before he shuts the door and hits the window latch. Like that. It all depends on what he tells me. No, we thought we had fixed the wheelie problem, and it was obviously in the semifinal and the final. So the reason the first 2 runs on Monday were good and the last 2 were not is we changed stators between the quarterfinals and the semifinals and went back to the wheelie stator because it is faster, but we thought we had fixed the wheelie. Obviously we didn't. But we're working on that. But I told somebody, maybe Richard, that when you're on the bump spot going into the last chance qualifier and know that you have to make it to the finish line in order to get in, you do some stupid stuff. Like in no other time would I have ever pedaled what I did in Q3 to get it to the finish line ever. Like that, you are asking to turn
you're in
that thing
driver
around.
mode.
You are,
You don't,
but,
yeah.
I mean, you have to. I knew when it started towards the wall, I'm like, well, either something bad is going to happen or we're about to qualify for the U.S. Nationals. Like one of two things is about to happen. And I just gave it the old chop job and drove her back over there. But man, and there's a lot of people that'll tell you that, especially you get down into eliminations and it might be a tire and a half or a tire out of the groove. I'm just going to hang on with it. God, man, bad stuff happens. So I don't suggest that to anybody who has plans to come run NHRA Pro Modified. Like, just if you think maybe I should lift, you should have lifted like 2 seconds ago. And Stevie will tell you the same thing. He's cowboyed some stuff that he shouldn't have and wrecked some stuff. And I guess you could say got lucky because we normally I would have gotten back to the trailer and Justin would have sat me down and just cussed me for an hour.
Well, I was getting ready to ask because we don't talk about Justin Elks enough. Justin and I had damn near a fist fight on Friday night because we were arguing about Pro Mod rules or whatever. But what's he like in your earphones? What's he like as a crew chief? Because I met Justin a long time ago. He was working maybe at Wilson Manifolds in Florida. Yep. I can't remember the first time I met him, but we met as by proxy by way of Sheikh Khaled from the Al-Anabi days. And Justin and I became closely. And I told him, I said, and I didn't know shit from apple butter back then, but I told him, I said, hey man, you're going to be special in Pro Mod because you're going to bring a level of professionalism. He was a pro stock guy. Mm-hmm. He'd crew chiefed for Shane Gray. He'd been a part of a lot of successful operations. And I told him, I said, you're going to bring an air of professionalism that, like it or lump it, as Ricky Smith might say, your best friend, that doesn't exist in Pro Mod to this day. What's it like working with Justin Elks? For those that don't know, Justin Elks is the owner and founder of Modern Racing in Mooresville, North Carolina. I consider him a friend of mine. We vacation together. His whole family's a sweetheart group of people. But what's he like as a crew chief? Because he does really bring a pro stock approach. We're dragging rocker panels. We're trying to run 9 flat down low. What's he like in your ear?
Always calm. I hear it all the time. He doesn't talk. We don't talk a whole lot, right? Like we're not up there telling war stories or, looking at people in the crowd or whatever, like he asked me if I can hear him before I fire up, left, right, left, good job. And that's it. And then in the shutdown,
all business,
ET and mile an hour. If we when we won on Monday, I wish I could take my earplugs and pull them out like this because it was just this radio static and screaming, but obviously I was pumped up too. But he's always calm, always got a plan, always got a fix, whether it's for my car or the 15 others that are qualified that day, that more than likely he's either 1 wired, 2 half built, or both, if he's not on the laptop in my lounge, he is in somebody else's pit fixing somebody else's.
I saw him over there working on Mike Moorhead's car. Yeah. He's got his hand in a lot of stuff, man. And it's cool because, young guys, it's cool to see a young guy have the footprint that Justin has in drag racing right now. How hard is it to race and win? One of the big storylines, and I kept hearing, I'm drawing blank on this kid's name. The kid that's announcing, Jason something, the kid that's announcing during Pro Mod. If you know his last name, let's put it in the comments so we can give him some credit because he's doing a fantastic job. I told him this. But the kid that's announcing during Pro Mod continually made mention of the fact that you're the only turbo car in the field. Yeah. A few years, not that long ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I would have told you that we were staring down the barrel of all turbo Pro Mods, right? Yeah. So how hard is it today? You're the only one, Lyle. You're the only twin turbo car out there. Not that long ago, as I've said, thank you, Jim Parks. I appreciate you, brother. Shout out to my boys at Drink Hard Racing. Looking forward to partying with you soon. Jason Galvin did a great job, I thought, on the PA this week for Pro Mod. Yeah. How hard is it to race a turbo car right now?
It's hard. They are the hardest combination to get up and down the racetrack, bar none. And I'll be honest, man, and I'll say it here that if there's not some help and maybe some parity change, in the works. I don't know how much longer.
You got to get some weight off that thing, right? So you can move it around. Because what are you guys at, 2,700?
No. We're 2,595.
What? Y'all are at 2,595? Okay, yeah. I thought you guys were at 2,700.
But we're still at 33 pounds of boost with a pair of 88. Like, they're just so hard to get up and down the racetrack, man. And like super inconsistent sometimes, and it's like nothing Justin can do, nothing I can do. It's just, it's not as repeatable. And that's so big here. Like, you need to be able to, in qualifying, you need to be able to just start knocking it off a couple hundredths at a time, right? If the conditions allow. And then on race day, you just need to put a 574 in or a 575 and just,
because y'all are at 33 pounds of boost.
33. Yeah. And the boost controller it needs some updating, and like, there's just some things that need to happen. And we do have some turbos that we're going to test for the NHRA.
What do you think the answer is on the turbo? Because personally, it's weird to think about how dramatically this has changed. I've had this conversation with Steve Petty. I've had it with Harry Ruska. I've had it, a gazillion times. Dillard, the list goes on. It does seem peculiar to me that we went from turbos being perhaps the most dominant combination in Pro Mod history to being almost extinct, as my buddy Danny Rowe would say, going the way of the dodo. I think that's what we're looking at right now, is there not being a turbo Pro Mod. It's got to be about giving those cars power, right? Because initially when Mike Moran and all those guys showed up with Mike Moran showed up in Vegas with the twin turbo Monte Carlo, there was no boost limit. None. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, it's like 40 something, and then it's 40, then then it's 38 or 37, 35, 33. Is it give these cars some power, put some weight back on them? Because they also used to be very heavy. I think those cars used to be 2,700 pounds. Yeah. So I'm just curious, how do you punt and just get a screw blower, or is there a way to stick the turbo deal out?
I would really like to stick it out if the rules allow. Like, I really like the turbo stuff. It's kind of been my deal most of my career, but we either have to get rid of the boost controller and find a smaller turbo that you just run uncorked,
like 70 something millimeter.
Maybe we're going to test some for the NHRA and Precision here soon, and just see what they do, or they just allow any boost controller. Because even though that there's, Joe O and that hyperactive controller is a good piece, it's just older technology, and it just doesn't regulate the boost well. And so we've got to figure out a way to either one, just allow any boost controller and have a 33 PSI max, right? Or find a turbo that we can just run.
I was just hearing you say, what about putting turbos? Because I remember having this conversation with Shannon Jenkins. Where the fuck? I think we were in Gainesville 100 years ago. And it's no secret, Shannon Jenkins, the Iceman, is my drag racing hero. Some people look at Don Garlitz, some people look at Force, some people look at Perdone. Shannon, the Iceman Jenkins, is my hero. And he looked at me and he said, Wes, it's a mechanical limitation. He goes, you have to have a mechanical limitation. He says, the supercharged cars have a pulley, cubic inches and a pulley. It's a mechanical limitation. The nitrous engines, it's cubic inches and the amount of nozzles in those intake runners. He goes, there's a mechanical limitation. The turbo cars at the time, right? This was pre, the hyperactive mandated boost controller. He goes, it's a dial. It's a horsepower deal. And he goes, and I'm just curious, do you feel that this whole situation could be remedied by turbos that were able to run max effort? Let's put smaller turbos on them. Maybe it's not 88s like we have currently. Maybe it's, I don't know, because I'm not the guy. Steve Petty, you're probably the guy. But is it let's put 67 millimeter turbos and let you guys run these things balls out?
Yeah.
Because they'll only make 33, 34 pounds of boost.
Right. Yeah. It's going to end up taking more than that when you run a smaller turbo to equate to the same amount of power. Right. But yeah, it is. It's find a smaller turbo, run it uncorked with no boost limit, and just let it be what it's going to be. The problem is just like you saw when they slowed the Pro Charger down last year, and the teams had to go out and spend just bukus of dollars on gearing and whether it was compression and camshaft and converter, all these things. There's some stuff that's going to have to change across the board in order for that thing to really run at its max potential, right?
Do you have any fear of there being, like, when I looked at Indy this past weekend, obviously Chris Thorne, holy shit, we got to get Chris on this show, because holy shit, what these guys are doing is massive. And I want to publicly give kudos. I'm a big Jamie Miller fan, but Mikey Reese deserves a tremendous amount of credit for stepping in as crew chief of that car this past week. I've been a big Mikey Reese fan for a long time. When he was crewing on, he was car chief on the Troy Coughlin Jags Corvette that won multiple world championships. I'm a huge fan of this young man. But like, do you have any fear? Because I do. I'd preface this by saying that of Pro Mod, NHRA Pro Mod at least, rapidly becoming screw blowed and door cars, top alcohol funny car with doors. Do you? Because that's what I feel like we're staring down the barrel of right now.
Yep.
Really?
And the only way that it doesn't become that is if Ricky, if he does decide to retire as a driver, if he crew chiefs and farms out a couple of his cars to customers to allow the nitrous combo to stay, if Jeffrey Barker comes back, and if I decide to stick with turbos and can find the funding to continue racing, I think that's the only way it doesn't. If
you had so let's just say the funding is a foregone conclusion because, buddy, we're going to work hard on that.
Yeah.
But if you could build a new car, or what would you run in to start the 2023 season?
I mean, honestly, it would depend on what the rules look like at the end of this year. Like
as they stand currently. Oh, you're running a screw blown Camaro.
It would be
guaranteed.
Hard. It would be hard to not run a screw blower.
I was going to say, there's no chance. I mean, I'm sorry.
It'd be hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's, and that I do, and people get pissy with me when I say this, but wherever screw blowers go, they ruin everything. Yeah. There's a historical precedent that has been set by that combination, and I just truly believe that the NHRA had better ready themselves for, a 16 to 20 screw blown door cars, and maybe that's fine.
Well, no, I think it's a shame because we as the racers and as the committee that NHRA Pro Mod Rules Committee is in Indy last year, in my pit, standing outside under the awning in my trailer, unanimously voted that the screw blower should not be included as a combination in NHRA Pro Mod ever. Stevie Jackson led the meeting, or led that portion of the meeting, and explained why. Mike Janis spoke up. Like, there were tons of people there. Phil Schuler, these are blower gods. Like, they are it. When there's, with the exception of Todd Tutterow, like, they're it, man. Jeff Pierce was there. Like, they all said no to the screw blower. And we had no idea it was coming until the rules came out. Like, and if we, the racers and the blower, literally the guys who thrive off of blower racing, right? Stevie Jackson loves screw blowers. Why
wouldn't you?
And he said no, and they did it anyway. And I hope that it doesn't go all screw blower, but man, it didn't take them long. It took Stan Shelton, his first NHRA race ever, went to the final, and had he not had his little fumble up there in the beams there at the end,
he probably won that deal.
He may have won it.
I think he'd have probably won that deal. And I mean, and look at what they did. I mean, they show up, a pro line screw blower deal shows up in Midwest Drag Racing Series, they win. I mean, let's be honest. You know what I mean? They show up anywhere, they win. Yep. I mean, that is a deadly combination.
And I mean, Stevie should have won about 2 or 3 races this year since he switched, and has just had terrible luck. I mean, I told him, I said, I don't know what kind of ritual you need to have done in your shop, and
he's mad at me, I think.
God darn.
You need to talk to him. He's mad at me, I think. He thinks I don't like him anymore or something. I don't know. God. But
I don't like. I hope that we don't all go that way. But man, if I was building a new car, and in the off season, if we've got the time, I don't know what we're going to do next year, but it may not be turbos, And I mean, I hate to give up on what the progress we've made with precision and, and trying to bring the turbocharged combination back to NHRA Pro Mod, but I've been at it for. This will make a full year, have 3 wins with that combo, and I'm still the only one.
Well, I'm curious real quick. I mean, let me pull this up. Hold on. It'll take me 2 seconds. I apologize. But How about so when we posted on our Drag Illustrated social earlier this week that you won the U.S. Nationals, homeboy, this shit went viral. All right. So can you just, and I don't want to keep you forever, and I want to give a shout out to everybody that has stayed along. We're having a hell of a conversation here. Where it is. Where is this thing at? Hold on 2 seconds. I'm going to find it. Buddy, people are cheering you on around. Here it is. This bad boy, inside of 24 hours, 81,000 people reached on the graphic that we made. Inside of 24 hours, big dog. 81,129 organic. 0 paid. 0 paid. We don't do that. So I'm just curious, what has the last few days been like for you, man? I know we're talking about raising money for next year, but I did that whole production right there because you're a needle mover, Lyle. Is this a lot for you to process? The fact that there are people around the world that are cheering you on, that are winning vicariously through you. That was such a big deal. All the people you've made an impact on in the radio world, all the people you've made an impact on at burn units around the country, your toy drive that you do around the holidays. Can you just before I cut you loose, man, I don't think this whole sport loves you, Lyle.
I appreciate it. And
you say some crazy shit and you drink Yingling all night long, but I don't know anybody that has all of us cheering you on the way that you do, Lyle.
Well,
and I just hope you heard me say that.
Well, I appreciate it, and I've tried to work hard and stay humble at the same time because, I know that there are a million others that would love to be in my shoes, and I just happen to be the one to carry the torch, and like I told you earlier in the show, I've just been very fortunate, to have had the opportunities that I've had, my dad, be able, whether it's physically and financially, to allow me to do some of the things I've done, and I really hope that I'm just getting started. We are in need of some sponsorship right now, especially if I'm going to do anything next year, and while Chris Thorne is about half ran away, it would take a miracle to stop him at this point this year. I've definitely got the team. We just got to shake some bad luck, and I think we've got a combination that can win the championship. But I do appreciate everything that you guys have done. That it's my phone. I can't remember how many messages I had by the time I got to the winner circle, but I had I don't know, it was 200 and some text messages and 100 missed calls or something, and I still haven't gotten to everybody. So anybody that's watching that hasn't heard back from me, I apologize. I will get to you. I was at the bar with Greg Anderson on Monday night, me, him, and Dave Connolly and a couple.
Where'd y'all go? Somewhere cool?
I don't know, the only pub that was open at 11:30 on a Monday night. And we all were sitting there, and Greg was thumbing through his phone, and I was thumbing through my phone. And I said, "How many you got left?" And he was like, "Dude, I don't even want to talk about it." And while we're watching him win the race again on the projector there in the bar, but it's humbling, to know that what we do makes that big of an impact. I just hope that we can translate that into a little help, especially to finish the year and then make a true charge at a championship next year. I think we can do it. I know we can, by God, we just won the U.S. Nationals,
I was going to say, man, I feel like you guys, man, you're a couple of bad breaks away from being in the thick of it right now. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? 100%. So it's so do you think let's just, before I cut you loose, big dog, what do you think the rest? How many races we got left? Three.
We got Charlotte. So I'm at home.
Charlotte, St. Louis, and Dallas.
Yeah.
So what's the Charlotte race going to be like for you? That's going to have to be spectacular. I know you've done it once this year, but is it fun to race with all the locals?
Yeah, it's a little more pressure. Just because all my friends and family are there, and they've all taken their time and spent money to buy tickets, and they're all there, and the last thing you want to do is not qualify or go out first round, which earlier this year we went to the final and came up just short on a crazy final round. But Justin and I was in Justin's office before I walked here in the conference room to do this, and we were talking about all the things we're going to change and what we're going to try to do to go to Charlotte and win. I want to win out. I mean, everybody does, right? But I think we've righted our program enough right now that we have the true potential. The weather's coming into our favor. We won at Dallas last year. It's where we finished. Like, I literally think we've got a chance to win out. But we've got to fund ourselves to get there. And two, we just got to still keep the bad luck off of us and make some good runs up and down the racetrack, But before I go, I do want to thank Fuel Tech and D-Wagon. I failed to do that in my top end interview, and I feel terrible about it. But I want to thank Fuel Tech and D-Wagon for sponsoring the class for the year. Pro Charger was a presenting sponsor. M&M's been a presenting sponsor. PRS, Mike Janus Superchargers.
Sorry, he's my dog.
They've all stepped up, to sponsor this class this year. JBS is doing one, I think, Justin Bond, and there's some more coming up here in the near future that haven't been announced. But it's because of them that NHRA Pro Mod is the richest sanctioning body for pro modified drag racing in existence. We are the best paying sanctioning body that there is. And it's because of them that we're able to do that. D-Wagon did an awesome job at Brainerd with the shootout. I thought the chip draw was awesome, added some zazz out there. One didn't like it. Who cares? And I'm just thankful that all these companies believe in what we're trying to do here. And in continuing to keep the class alive. We've had all this talk for so long about Pro Mod circling the toilet bowl, NHRA Pro Mod circling the toilet bowl. And I don't think that's true. There's at least 4 to 5 new cars coming next year, and I think it's going to be pretty stout. And they're players. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. I'll let them.
Oh, trust me. Yeah, there's some trouble coming.
And it's going to be good. Like this Stevie Jackson says it all the time. This is the cream of the crop. Like, you come over here, and I think the main reason that you've seen low car counts, the cost is one thing, but I think it's the competition. I think it's so hard to win over here. People don't show up knowing that they can win. To be
honest, I think that is the thing that is very uncomfortable to say out loud. You know what I mean? Because everybody wants to find something to pin it on. Historically, it's been easy because you could just say, well, I can't get in. You got to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. Well, now that the barrier to entry has been removed, it's strictly about the competition. Justin Elks and I talked about this extensively over the course of the week in Indy, that this is the hardest place to, if you're a pro mod fast door slammer guy, there's no harder place to race right now. And that's not a shot at anybody.
No, not at all.
It just is what it is. I mean, you're racing against full-time professional racers that earn their living doing this. There's nobody working on cars for Coors Light. You know what I mean? It is literally, these are hired gun crew chiefs, hired gun crews, hired gun drivers. Everybody is here. And we're racing a quarter mile.
Yeah.
It's the only quarter mile pro mod drag racing series left in existence.
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that it is the toughest there is. But tell you what, Lyle, we couldn't be happier for you. We need young men like you being successful. We need you in the winner's circle because you're the future of our sport, man. I couldn't be more proud of you nor happier for you. I love you like a brother, man. And congratulations, dude. Seriously. Thanks for coming, buddy.
I would obviously like to thank Elite Motorsports, everybody here at Modern, MacFab Beadlocks, Motion Raceworks is still a part of my deal. But if there's anybody watching that has a company or knows of somebody that wants to ride for the rest of the year, we've messed around and won the U.S. Nationals, and I think we've got a shot to win out for the rest of the year. So you can get in touch with Wes. There's many ways to find me. Social media is
man, you're going to have to call Nancy's going to phone because now I'm fitting to go, shit, we're going to have to sponsor a pro mod car. God, fuck. Last thing I needed to do was, but I ain't letting him not win this deal. Hey, Lyle, thank you so much, man. Tell Pops hello, Mom, and kiss that little baby for us.
I'll do it, man.
We'll see you guys soon. Next stop, Charlotte, then St. Louis. I'll see you in Charlotte. All right, brother?
Okay. Sounds good, man.
Thanks buddy.
Wes.
We'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, hey, I want to thank you all. We've had a hell of a crowd here today, and I really do have to pinch myself to think about the fact that it is an honor and a privilege to share the stories of these men and women. That has been our goal since day one. I remember the first day at Drag Illustrated, the day I kicked the doors open on this deal 16 years ago. The goal was to put faces to the names on the windows, right? I remember knowing what Jason Scruggs' name was. I remember knowing Shannon Jenkins' name. I remember knowing all these guys' names, but I didn't know what they looked like. I didn't know what they sounded like. I didn't know their story. I didn't know how they behaved, right? And it became a part of, it's like a mission for me. It's like I'm on a mission from God to share the stories of these men and women that make the sport of drag racing so special. Like, I get it that it could be a shtick and I could be running my mouth, and I am. But I mean it when I say this stuff. Drag racing is comprised of the greatest human beings on the planet Earth. These are small business owners. These are problem solvers. These are hard workers, blue, gray collar men and women, right, that spend their weekends at the drag strip. And I truly believe this is the great American motorsport. People came home from men and women came home from World War II. They started working on their hot rods, right? They started street racing, right? Wally Parks, God bless him, organized that movement, right? Put these guys on racetracks. And here we are today, 70 years later, with drag racing going on. There's 420 drag strips active right now, right? 420 drag strips in North America. You know what I mean? Like, this is a special time to be alive. I look around and I see the NHRA packing this place out. I see the Yellow Bullet Nationals this past weekend, and I want to send an apology. You know, we didn't talk about the YB Nats this weekend today as much as we should. We may have to do a special episode just so I can give those guys their due, because Jim Halsey, Monty Miko, that whole crew, everybody that succeeded this past weekend at Cecil County Dragway in Maryland deserved their moment in the sun. But this sport, this group of people are special, and all of you should be proud. You should be patting yourselves on the back. This is a unique group of people. We'll give someone the shirt off our back, right? We stand up when it's time to say the Pledge of Allegiance. We bow our head when it's time to pray, right? We treat people right. We do the right thing. We do the hard thing, right? And I just hope you guys all know how much I mean it, and how much I appreciate each and every one of you being here every Wednesday, being a part of this, right? We've been sending a magazine out for 16 years, 177 issues strong. We got a squadron of people trying to share the gospel of drag racing. This is a sport. There's no reason we have to refuse to settle, right? We have settled. We have settled for our post here in drag racing. We've settled. We've allowed this to be the case. But nobody can relate to driving an Indy car around a track in Monaco, right? Nobody can relate to being racing against Lewis Hamilton, right? I mean, every man, woman, child, young, old, black, brown, purple, green, yellow, every race, creed, color has pulled up to a stop sign and looked over and said, not today, right? Today is my day. When that green light drops, I'm the first to the finish line. We have to recognize that this sport is special, right? And we have to tell these stories. We have to connect the folks. We have to spread the gospel of drag racing, and we can't do it without each and every one of you guys. Thank you all so much. Huge shout out to our sponsors, Redline Oil, Elite High Performance, Stroud Safety, FlowRacing.com, Holly Performance Park, Sand Haulers of America, a whole world of companies that support Drag Illustrated Magazine. My whole team, thank you guys so much. We will see you next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, the Wes Buck Show, right here on the Drag Illustrated social media channels and the YouTube channel. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you next week, all right?